Chapter 1442. Boom. The two collided in the air, bursting with boundless reverse will, shaking the blood-red light curtain in the sky and making it crumble. However, the reverse will was stronger when it was stronger. The reverse will of the heaven-defying divine warrior was like this, and so was Su Yu's reverse will. Su Yu's divine Laksana's fists were smashed by the five-finger mountain, which stimulated the reverse will. The body of 1,000 feet suddenly increased by 1,000 feet. The smashed fists quickly recovered, and with an even stronger reverse will, it counterattacked. The same was true for the five-finger mountain, which was full of the will to obliterate all disobedience. Sensing the unyielding will of Su Yu's godly law Laksana, the five-finger mountain suddenly doubled in size, suppressing with a stronger reverse will. Bang! There was a loud roar, and a stronger collision broke out between the two. This time, the arms of the godly law Laksana were shattered, but with the reverse will, it grew 100 feet high again, fighting back with an even more unyielding will. The five-finger mountain was also enraged, and its reverse will was strong, constantly expanding. Two completely different reverse wills, surging wave after wave, accompanied by the skyrocketing of each other's reverse will. Nitian looked at it coldly and said, "It is worthy of being a creature whose ancestors were willing to be reduced to a godly law Laksana. Its reverse will is not strong, but it is endless and has no end in sight." Staring at the reverse will that was constantly rising and condensing, Nitian killing intent was even stronger. Su Yu's reverse will was not obliterated, but with the help of Nitian oppression, it was broken again and again. Now it was 15,000 feet high. "I can't let him go any longer," Nitian said, and his eyes suddenly burst with a fierce light. He slowly closed his eyes. The five-finger mountain in the sky gradually stopped, suspended in the void, motionless. But behind the five-finger mountain, there was a phantom of 100 feet high. The five-finger mountain was just the right hand of the phantom. Suddenly, an overbearing reverse will that was 100 times stronger than the five-finger mountain suddenly descended into the dark dreamland. Its huge body propped up the sky and earth of the entire world of darkness, and its huge head cracked the blood curtain, as if it could not withstand its towering body, and could not withstand the terrifying and boundless annihilation of the defying will. The appearance of the figure was none other than Nitian. "I used the bloodline inheritance, the reverse will, and tried my best to kill you in your dream. Su Yu, you should be proud of yourself for leaving this place in such a way, and your name will be known throughout the ages." Nitian's huge body moved gently. He gently lifted his right foot, but this slight movement created a terrifying reverse intent that was 10 times stronger than the five-finger mountain. Bang! With a stomp, Su Yu's 10,000-foot-tall virtual shadow was shattered by the stomp and turned into dust. The defying will was destroyed. Su Yu's face turned pale all of a sudden. As a soul, his body had cracked, and he had been greatly affected. The giant foot's momentum did not diminish, and it seemed like it was going to crush Su Yu along with it. Raising his head to look at the gigantic palm that covered the sky, he felt a sense of unease from the depths of his soul. At this moment, Su Yu was like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished in the storm. The rebellious will is rising again. Su Yu's eyes were filled with unwillingness, and his rebellious intent was unquenchable. The broken shadow of the godly lordship was reborn once again, turning into a giant of 1,500 feet. He roared at the sky, gathered his whole body's rebellious will, and blasted it at the giant foot. But the result was that it only created a ripple on the sole of the foot. Then, it was crushed by the giant palm without any resistance. Bang! The giant palm stepped on the fragments of the godly lordship under its feet, constantly grinding the fragments into dust, and then grinding the dust into nothingness. Nitian's huge face was full of indifference, ruthlessness, and contempt, like a god looking down on an ant. If you were given another 10,000 years, I might be afraid of you, but now you are too weak to withstand a single blow." The giant foot stepped on the ground, completely trampling all the fragments into nothingness. The soul that was born was broken, and it swept over Su Yu like a tsunami. His soul was blasted away for an innumerable distance, and his body, which was already broken, was finally broken, and most of his chest was shattered. No! The holy maiden flew over and wanted to help Su Yu. However, the giant palm of Nitian Gyun descended from the sky and held her in his palm. He said indifferently, "You are destined to be my woman, and you are not allowed to contact other men." After saying that, he stuffed the soul of the holy maiden into his chest. Looking at it from afar, one could see that the soul of the holy maiden was imprisoned in his transparent chest. Once he destroyed the wizard tribe and found the body of the holy maiden, he would return this part of the soul, wake her up, and let her become his real woman, a real concubine. Nitian Gyun looked down at Su Yu, and the corners of his mouth raised into a light smile. "How is it? This kind of feeling of watching the woman who loves you being taken away is not good, is it? It doesn't matter, it will be over soon." The huge foot stepped on Su Yu with the momentum of crushing everything. The world roared, and the dark dreamland was on the verge of collapse. No one could save Su Yu. Su Yu stared at the empty chest, looked at the soul body that was about to break, and gritted his teeth, without the slightest hint of surrender. "As long as I am alive, I will not stop fighting." Su Yu's mind echoed with an incomparably firm belief. Along the way, how dangerous had the predicament he had encountered. How desperate was the situation he had encountered. But he had never given up, only because he had someone to protect. He had unfinished business, and he had regrets that he had not made up for. Obviously, the whereabouts of Xia Jingyu will be found soon, and I will be able to reunite with her soon. How can I fall here? Facing the annihilation of the strong reverse will, Su Yu stood up firmly. Under the huge pressure, the bones of his 2 legs cracked and burst into pieces. Pieces of bone spurs pierced through the flesh and stabbed out of the body. One by one, the tendons broke, and the blood, under high pressure, shot out along the pores like a line of blood. A stream of blood flowed out of his facial orifices. He stood up, and under the incomparable annihilation of despair, he still stood up. Looking at Su Yu, who was covered in blood, his eyes were still clear, and still bursting with the monstrous reverse will. As an enemy, Zheng Lin also felt trembling at this moment, feeling admiration from the bottom of his heart. Death was inevitable, but there was a difference between dying on one's knees and dying on one's feet. The former was sad, and the latter was respectable. A deep tremor seemed to arouse the dreams of Zheng Lin's youth. At that time, wasn't he also young and vigorous? Didn't he also make great aspirations, and didn't he also fight endlessly? But since when was he forced to lower his head by reality, and his wings were cruelly broken? Zheng Lin's heart was boiling again, and he seemed to understand why he had been stagnant for so many years and was always under Zhao Tianyin. It was because he had lost the heart of fighting like Su Yu. He closed his eyes silently, and his gloomy face gradually bloomed with a relieved smile. He held the hilt of the sword at his waist and laughed up to the sky. "Su Yu, you go first, and I will draw the sword for you later." No one could save Su Yu. All he could do was draw a sword and send his own sword to Nitian Gyun. This sword was for himself and for Su Yu. Nitian Gyun was surprised. Under this reverse will, which was 100 times stronger than Su Yu, he could still stand up. Looking down at the short figure, Nitian Gyun felt uneasy for no reason. He seemed to see a giant who was no weaker than him, growing rapidly. Bang! Bang! His heart suddenly jumped, and uneasiness lingered in his heart. The light smile on his face disappeared unconsciously, and was replaced by a dignified look. The speed of the giant palm suddenly skyrocketed, and it slammed down. However, the more the giant palm stepped down, the more intense the uneasiness in Nitian Gyun's heart became, and he felt more and more frightened. Close. 1,000 feet. Under the giant palm, countless cracks appeared on the ground of the dark dreamland. 5,000 feet. A strong air pressure condensed into a crazy shock wave that swept everything. 100 feet. The huge reverse will directly obliterated most of the dark dreamland, leaving only the blood-colored light curtain to struggle. 500 feet. 10 feet. 3 feet. 10 feet. At this moment, the giant palm had almost overlapped with the ground. If this was the outside world, all creatures would have been destroyed. However, under the giant palm, there was a broken body, a thin figure, and a figure that was not tall. He was still standing, his body straight, like a spear standing up to the sky. So unyielding, so full of fighting spirit. No one doubted that even in death, the fighting spirit would remain in the world, and would not dissipate for a long time. Finally, when the giant palm slammed on top of Su Yu's head, the spear, the straight and unyielding figure would be crushed into dust. He slowly opened his eyes. However, it was no longer the eyes of a living creature. It was a pair of almost dark red eyes, very similar to the sacred forest in the Azura Forbidden Lands. What was different was that Su Yu's eyes didn't emit a ruthless and vicious aura that came from someone who had lost all rationality. Instead, they emitted a terrifying and uneasy will. Fighting spirit. Crazy fighting spirit. Endless life, endless fighting spirit. Su Yu murmured, and an extremely mysterious atmosphere surrounded him. In the eyes of Nitian Gyun, Su Yu gradually turned into a weapon. One moment it was like a peerless sword, the next moment it was like a rare treasure that could destroy the sky, and the next moment it was like a long spear that could sweep the world. In short, with a single thought, Su Yu changed in an instant, as if he had become all the weapons in the world. Soldiers, war. Gather the weapons of the world, and absorb endless fighting spirit. Swoosh, with a soft sound, the weapon that Su Yu had turned into made a roar that seemed to split the sky and earth, and a bright sword light appeared above his head. Crack, with a crisp sound, Nitian Gyun's foot was split in half. The foot that was cut in half fell along both sides of Su Yu, directly smashing the blood-colored light curtain on the ground. The blood-colored light curtain was broken, and the dark dream was back in their control. Not good! Nitian Gyun's face changed slightly. Kaylin's eyes flashed, and with a thought, she immediately escaped from the dream. Xinglin was also overjoyed and shouted, "Su Yu, run!" He also fled immediately. However, Su Yu did not move. His blood-red eyes were full of crazy fighting spirit, and he had no intention of retreating. Before Nitian Gyun had time to rejoice, Su Yu turned into a peerless sword and swept his legs. Crack, his legs were also shattered. Looking at the extremely fierce mutation of Su Yu, Nitian Gyun finally showed a serious expression. The Heaven-Fighting Warrior, the second of the Heaven-Fighting Three Strokes. Limitless Style. Chapter 1443. It was rumored that the most difficult person to inherit the legacy was the Heaven-Fighting Divine Warrior. To inherit his Heaven-Fighting Three Strokes, the power of the bloodline was far from enough. One must also have an immortal heart of fighting spirit. Rebirth in despair, erupt in hopelessness, and nirvana in hot blood. Therefore, the descendants of the Heaven-Fighting Divine Warrior were almost extinct because they all died in nirvana again and again. The number of people was decreasing, and now there were almost none. Therefore, the Heaven-Fighting Three Strokes were lost. He never expected that Su Yu not only practiced, but also succeeded in nirvana to the second stroke, the ultimate style. Many descendants of the Heaven-Fighting Divine Warrior had not reached the realm, but Su Yu had reached it. The murderous intention in his eyes was surging. This man must not be left alive, otherwise he would become a great threat in the future. Die! The heaven-defying Divine Warrior roared, and his broken right leg was instantly regenerated, obliterated by an even stronger reverse will. Bang! The weapon that Suyu had transformed into was immediately broken. However, before he could rejoice, the fragments immediately reassembled and recast the divine weapon. The sharpness of the divine weapon could destroy the world, its sharpness chilling the heart. An inextinguishable fighting spirit not only did not weaken, but became stronger. The heaven-defying divine warrior crushed the divine weapon again. However, the fragments were reassembled in an instant and recast into a divine weapon. The sharpness was even stronger, and the fighting spirit was even stronger. A reverse will rose in the heart of the heaven-defying divine warrior. There was nothing in the world that could defy him. He did not believe that he could not kill an ant. Boom! Boom! Again and again, Suyu was crushed by the boundless giant palm and turned into endless fragments. However, it was reforged again, and each time, it was stronger than the last. Each time, it was sharper and colder than the last. After 9,999 times, the heaven-defying divine warrior finally panicked. Suyu could not be killed, nor could he be obliterated. Just like the legendary ultimate style, the fighting spirit was infinite until the enemy was killed. At this moment, the divine weapon that Suyu had transformed into exuded a peerless sharpness and was extremely terrifying. One blow could cut off half of Nitian-gyun's body. The awe-inspiring fighting spirit and the immortal rebirth finally made Nitian-gyun want to retreat. He had to retreat. Not only was he unable to kill Suyu, but more importantly, if he didn't retreat, this part of his soul would be destroyed in this dream. The original body in the outside world would sleep forever. This time, he could not kill Suyu. Instead, it was Suyu who had been pressured into desperate situations time and time again, allowing Suyu to be reborn and comprehend the limitless style, which no one else could comprehend. Suyu, how about we call it a draw? Nitian-gyun said. In an instant there was a sharp pain in his chest. Nitian-gyun could not help but grit his teeth, as if he was enduring a heart-wrenching pain. What was even more strange was that the defying will deity statue had shrunk to half its original size, turning into a figure of 5,000 feet. As a heaven-defying divine warrior, no one had been able to defy him since ancient times. This was the reason why he was so powerful. Now, he had chosen to give up, which meant he had gone against his own will that could not be defied. Therefore, the defying will was weakened by more than half. However, Suyu's dark red eyes were filled with fighting intent. It was like a spark that had been ignited, and it was burning even more intensely. What answered Nitian-gyun was Suyu's sharpness. He transformed into a long whip and lashed out abruptly. Whoosh! The remaining blood-red light curtain was directly smashed by this terrible blow, and there was nothing left. Nitian-gyun screamed, and half of his body was smashed. The half of the body that had sealed the holy maiden was also smashed. Nitian-gyun was furious. Boy, do you really want to fight me to the end? Don't forget, it is only a matter of time before I destroy the wizard tribe. My real body is 10,000 times more powerful than it is in the dream. As soon as his voice fell, his body of 5,000 feet was reduced to less than 3,000 feet. He retreated once again, and the defying will weakened once again. What answered him was another destructive attack from Suyu. Nitian-gyun's eyes were full of resentment. Junior, you forced me to retreat and destroyed my defying way. I swear that I will crush your bones and scatter them into ashes. What answered him was a blow from Suyu's meteor hammer, which smashed his body of 3,000 feet into pieces. He was directly killed. At the critical moment, he shouted, "Get out of the dream!" A mysterious wave swept across, and before this part of Nitian-gyun's soul was completely shattered, he escaped back to his original body. However, his defying will figure shrank from 1,000 feet to 100 feet, 100 feet to 10 feet, and finally returned to its normal size. The way of the defying will of the divine warrior was destroyed. The defying will was powerful and incomparable because of the defying will. But everything in the world had its advantages and disadvantages. The defying will made the strongest dynasty, but it also bound them. Once the defying will was used, they could not retreat. Retreat was a violation of the way of the defying will, as if cutting off the foundation of the way of the defying will. No matter how strong the defying will was before, once the way of the defying will was immediately destroyed. Therefore, the defying will would not be used easily. If it was used, it would be a fight to the death. In the dream, the soul of the divine warrior could only be used with the defying will. Now that he chose to retreat, the defying will that he had cultivated for thousands of years was shattered. In reality, apart from his cultivation, there was no strong way of the defying will to speak of, and his strength was lost by more than 30%. Puff, in the sky above Fan Capital, in a behemoth, in a secret room protected by countless guards, Nitian Gyun, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of milky white divine blood. His eyes were ferocious, angry, and crazed, like a scheming traitor who had been exposed on the eve of a coup d'état. Around him, the defying will was declining at an alarming rate, and even the color of the divine blood that was spat out was gradually turning gray. Hearing the movement in the secret room, the two confidants who were guarding outside immediately rushed in. Monarch. They subconsciously saw that the color of several drops of divine blood on the ground was rapidly dimming. They could clearly see that this was a sign that the power of the bloodline was fading. Moreover, the defying will that was declining in Nitian Gyun's body was very clear. The two were shocked. Monarch, this is, suddenly, the two realized something, and they felt a chill all over. My way of the defying will has been broken, Nitian Gyun sighed softly, and his voice was soft, without any hint of blame. But the two confidants were covered in cold sweat, trembling all over, and kept bowing their heads to beg for mercy. Monarch, please have mercy. We didn't see anything, please spare our lives. This is my fault, I am very sorry to have implicated you. Well, you can go in peace, I will take good care of your family, Nitian Gyun said lightly. The two confidants trembled all over, knowing that they had discovered Nitian Gyun's big secret and were about to be killed. At this moment, how could they dare to wait to be killed? Without saying a word, the two jumped up and turned around to escape. But before they could escape to the door of the secret room, their heads were penetrated by two palms, and their souls were obliterated. A flame rose from the 5 fingers, and the two bodies were burned to ashes, leaving nothing behind. Nitian Gyun waved his sleeves, erased the remaining defying will in the sky, and returned to his seat, saying indifferently, "Come in." Walala. A group of guards entered and looked at the ashes on the ground, and their hearts were shocked. The two guards on the left and right intended to rebel, but they were discovered by me in time and were killed on the spot. Now you immediately arrest the relatives and friends of these two people, and anyone who has anything to do with them. One of the guards replied, "Yes, sir. May I ask the monarch how to deal with them?" "Well, now is the time to use the troop. Just in case, kill them on the spot," Nitian Gyun said. In addition, pay attention to whether they have communication jade pendants or other items on them. No one is allowed to read them privately, and they must be handed over to me personally. Those who violate this rule will be treated as traitors and will be killed. 9. Clan. Yes. Everyone was shocked and immediately led the troop. Next, there was a panic in the barracks, and the smell of blood permeated the entire barracks. But this matter was handled very secretly, and the commotion quickly subsided, and almost no one noticed. Soon, Nitian Gyun got a pile of communication jade pendants in his hands, one of which was held in his palm, and his face was cold. They really spread the news, but fortunately, I was prepared. It turned out that the two men knew that they would die at the critical moment, and they secretly spread the news. Unfortunately, Nitian Gyun caught up with them again. He didn't want the outside world to know that his inverse divine path had been broken, and his strength had been greatly reduced. Summon the Imperial Guards. Soon, a group of imperial guards came. This was another group of trusted subordinates of the heaven-defying divine warrior, responsible for the peripheral defense. Just now, it was the internal guards who guarded his retreat, and they were more trusted than the imperial guards. Greetings to the monarch. The commander of the imperial guards knelt down. Nitian Gyun said coldly, I have found out that there are traitors in the internal guards. You wait for my order to arrest them. What? The imperial guards thought they had heard wrong. The internal guards were the absolute trusted subordinates of the heaven-defying divine warrior. Yes. This general obeys. The commander said. Wait. Nitian Gyun's eyes burst with ruthlessness. After they are brought to justice, they don't need to be brought back, do you understand? Everyone secretly inhaled a breath of cold air. The implication was that they would be executed secretly? But they did not dare to ask and immediately obeyed the order. When they left, Nitian Gyun sighed, Don't blame me for being ruthless. Who let you know too much? He couldn't guarantee that the imperial guards who carried out the mission would also know the news. The only way was to kill them too. What he didn't know was that outside his secret room, a black shadow had silently flashed by, and it had seen everything that had happened. Xingjing. In the main hall of the Wang clan. The black threads on the foreheads of Cauldron and Xinglin, Su Yu, and the Saint Lady gradually faded, and the pink mist also gradually faded, making everyone present happy. It seemed that Su Yu had successfully rescued them. But strangely, they had not woken up for a long time. They had been worried for a long time, and finally, Cauldron and Xinglin woke up. The people in the hall immediately surrounded them and said in surprise, We were worried to death, and you finally woke up. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was the most excited. He looked at Xinglin as if he was looking at a treasure. On the contrary, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple frowned deeply and asked Cauldron, Cauldron, where is Su Yu? Where is the Saint Lady? Didn't they save you? Why haven't they woken up yet? Cauldron looked at the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, and a strange look flashed in her eyes. She quickly concealed it, and her face showed a sad expression. The three of us were trapped in a dream by the enemy and forgot ourselves. It was Su Yu who entered the dream and rescued us. However, we met Nitian Gyun. Chapter 1444. Nitian Gyun? The two temple masters, the Wang clan master, and Ling Wu were all shocked. How did I meet him? For today's wizard tribe, Nitian Gyun was simply an invincible nightmare. Such a powerful figure had actually personally intercepted them. Then how did you escape? Where are Su Yu and the Saint Lady? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple was the most anxious. Hearing this, Xinglin was shocked. It is impossible for the Saint Lady to come back, but Su Yu, is he still fighting with Nitian Gyun? His unintentional words were like thunder exploding in everyone's ears. Everyone seemed to be stunned, staring at Xinglin dully, and said, You, who did you say was fighting against Nitian Gyun? Even the two hall masters, the Wang clan leader and Ling Wu were stunned, thinking that they had heard wrongly. Xinglin repeated, It was the battle between Su Yu and Nitian Gyun that broke a gap, and we were able to get out of the dream. But why didn't Su Yu come back? Could it be that he's still fighting? Hearing this, they couldn't help but feel terrified. Su Yu could actually fight against someone who was on par with the sect master. What was the result? Ling Wu asked in surprise. Xinglin said, The last time I saw it, Su Yu broke through something in a desperate situation, showing a very terrible fighting spirit, and then the seal was broken. The specific situation is unknown. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple immediately asked, What about the Saint Lady? Hearing this, Xinglin said in a deep voice, She was captured by Nitian Gyun. He threatened to break into this place, capture the saintess, and bring her into the harem. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple trembled. Her old face was filled with anger, murderous intent, and helplessness. The joy on everyone's faces quickly dimmed. Su-yu did not manage to escape and was most likely taken away by Nitian-gyun. Looking at the two unconscious bodies, everyone's eyes were filled with regret. One was a pure and flawless saintess, while the other was a peerless genius, a genius that shocked the world. They were going to fall into a deep slumber forever. But at this moment there was a weak movement in their bodies. The holy maiden's fingers flicked gently, as if she was struggling to wake up. In the dark dreamland, with the escape of Nitian-gyun, the dark red in Su-yu's eyes gradually faded and returned to normal. Su-yu took a deep breath as he looked at his shattered soul body. Although his injuries were severe, his soul hadn't been destroyed yet, so he just needed to rest for a while. Moreover, after being forced into a desperate situation, the limitless style, that had been shackled for a long time, finally broke through the bottleneck and reached the initial realm. The never-ending fighting will was undying and indestructible. Su-yu had a better understanding of its power, and he felt that this technique was even more magical. The more they fought, the stronger they became, until their enemies could no longer withstand it and killed them. With such a terrifying battle intent, he believed that any enemy who encountered it would have a headache. Oh, Su-yu turned around and saw that it was the Saint Lady. Half of Nitian-gyun's body that had sealed her was smashed by Su-yu. Nitian-gyun had no time to take care of her and lost her. The saintess had fallen into a coma, which should have been caused by the seal. He could clearly see traces of the heaven-defying divine warrior's soul inside her soul. If she fell into a coma, she would not be able to leave the dark dream world. "I can only get rid of these souls first," Su-yu said. After thinking for a moment, a crack appeared between his brows. Soul devouring. The unique technique of the fifth stage of the heavens, sun gazing at air, soul devouring. The two souls were immediately sucked out and absorbed into Su-yu's brow. After the impurities of these souls were removed, they were transformed into pure soul strength and integrated into Su-yu's soul. Suddenly, Su-yu felt his body swell, as if he was about to explode from the two soul strengths. Hiss! As expected of Nitian-gyun, just 2 wisps of soul strength are stronger than the souls of most level 3 deities. Su-yu was secretly amazed. After devouring the 2 souls, Su-yu's soul strength had soared to the realm of level 3. This is an unexpected gain. The soul strength of level 3 can do a lot of things, Su-yu said. At this time, the Saint Lady slowly woke up. When she opened her eyes and saw Su-yu, her eyes were misty. "Am I in a dream again?" She subconsciously stretched out a pair of snow-white arms and hooked them around Su-yu's neck. She exhaled and said, "Even in a dream, will I still think of you? Bad guy, I have completely fallen." Listening to her heart-stirring words, Su-yu couldn't help but take another look at this pure and beautiful face, and his heart inevitably swayed. But he still calmly grabbed her hands, put her down gently, and said, "Let's go back." His words awakened the half-asleep Saint Lady. Her eyes widened, and she looked at him face to face. Thinking of the shocking and shameful words she had just said, her snow-white and flawless face turned red, and her whole body stiffened, unable to move. "I'll leave first. You should keep up with me. Don't stay here any longer. The person who secretly set up the dreamland probably hasn't given up yet." Su-yu didn't want to continue being so embarrassed. With a thought, his figure disappeared and he left the dark world. The Saint Lady lay on the ground, stunned for a long time, and her face was filled with a bitter smile. How can I see him in the future? In the dream of the mortal world, she married him and gave birth to children for him. Coupled with the scene just now, the Saint Lady felt that she had no face to see Su-yu. She even wanted to stay in the dream and never leave. Meanwhile, to her horror, a clear and melodious voice of a woman actually sounded out from within the dark dreamland. "Do you want to obtain him? I can help you." Swish, a woman in a red dress, stepping on red clouds and dust, appeared in the dark dream. As soon as she appeared, the whole dream world trembled, as if it was afraid. The woman had fair skin, black eyebrows, and exquisite facial features. At first glance, she looked like a woman from a painting, with an unreal, dreamy beauty. The Saint Lady was shocked. She was not a fool. She appeared in this dream at will, most likely, because it was arranged by the dream master named Kunlun. With a single thought, she immediately left the dream. But strangely, the woman in the red dress stretched out two slender fingers and gently pointed. The Saint Lady, who was about to leave the dream, came back again. Such a shocking move made the Saint Lady look solemn. "Who are you?" The woman in the red dress smiled leisurely, and this smile was beautiful. "I said, I am the person who will help you get him." The Saint Lady was unmoved and said in a deep voice, "I am asking about your identity." The red-robed woman covered her mouth and chuckled. She was elegant but also had a different kind of charm to her. She was indescribably beautiful. Her eyebrows arched up and she chuckled, "Even I don't know who I am. However, there was once someone who intruded into the red dust forbidden area. He called me Red Dust Mistress." "What?" The Saint Lady's hands and feet were cold, and she could not help but gasp. The most terrifying existence in the Azura Forbidden Land, the Red Dust Lady. She was the mysterious creature who had injured the ancestors of the Wang clan in the isolation of the Forbidden Land. She could also enter the minds of the Wang clan members who had swallowed the red dust dream at will and control them with dreams. Knowing that it was this person, the Saint Lady's face turned pale. "Don't be afraid. If I wanted to hurt you, even Nitian Guyan would have died here, let alone you," the Red Dust Lady said leisurely, looking deeply at the Saint Lady. "I just want to help you." The Saint Lady did not fall for this trick and calmly said, "Help me? Why?" "Because I think that lovers should get married." The Red Dust Lady hurriedly stroked the flowing red clouds around her with her jade-like fingers. "The world of mortals is beautiful. Every year, the waterside pavilion is lonely and the bridge is lonely. After many years, the water is still floating, and there is no wind, no rain, no one is watching." The Saint Lady heard a bit of loneliness and coldness, and she could not help but think of her and Su Yu. Su Yu's eyes were clearly in front of her, but she felt that Su Yu's eyes were filled with the distant sky. The sky was so empty, but it could not contain her figure. Moved, the Saint Lady felt sympathy and said, "There are countless mortals in the Azura Forbidden Land. Why are you lonely? That is their world of mortals. I, from beginning to end, am just a passerby," the Red Dust Lady said quietly, unable to hide the loneliness in her expression. She looked at the Saint Lady and said, "You are very much like me in the past. The fallen flowers are yearning, but the water is heartless, and I have been lonely for countless years." The Saint Lady's expression eased a lot and she said, "How can you help me? You can only appear in dreams, right? I have a way, but I need you to promise me one condition." The Saint Lady said, "What condition?" "Wear this phoenix crown." The Red Dust Lady pointed to the top of her head. There was a golden, beautiful phoenix crown, exquisite and outstanding, exuding a peerless halo of beauty. The Saint Lady was mesmerized by it, and immediately became vigilant. "Help me and give me something? This thing is not good, is it? This thing is not dangerous to your life. If you agree, I will fulfill your wish, but if you don't, with his temperament, I don't see any future between you two." The last sentence undoubtedly moved the Saint Lady. Yes, Su Yu did not care about her, and there would be no future between them. After pondering for a long time, she chose to nod. "I'll say this in advance, if I don't get what I want in the end, I will not wear this phoenix crown." "Okay." The Red Dust Lady smiled leisurely, and she was beautiful. The Saint Lady suddenly felt a trance, and when she opened her eyes again, she had returned to the real world. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, Ling Wu, the Wang clan master, and many others looked at her with concern. Except for one person. Su Yu. "Mistress, I'm fine." The Saint Lady was a little disappointed. She looked around, but Su Yu was not there. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple said, Don't worry, Suyu has come back before you. He is nursing his soul in the house. Hearing that he was injured, the saint lady could not help but secretly scold him. Your mind is full of nonsense. Brother Su's soul was injured like that, and you blame him for not being around. However, thinking back to the sudden appearance of the red dust lady after Suyu left, the saint lady had some doubts. Was that another dream, or did the red dust lady really appear? And should she tell the mistress of the temple and Brother Su? After thinking about it carefully, the saint lady suppressed the idea. If it was a dream, then so be it. If it was real, it did not seem to have any bad effects, right? Suyu healed in the secret room for a day and a night. Under the effect of the heavenly fire of the spirit pool, his soul quickly recovered. Slowly opening his eyes, Suyu's eyes showed a rare look of excitement, anticipation, and nervousness. It was as if he had returned to the Shunyue Island when he first entered the Saint Realm. Chapter 1445. Red Dust Eyes. Suyu murmured, feeling carefully, and found that there was a residual power of the red dust in his body. After being tempered by the elixir, it was very docile and could be used by Suyu. These red dust powers were very weak and could only be used once. Suyu adjusted his state and, with excitement, operated the power of the red dust and forced them to his eyes. His eyes gradually turned pink like two pink beads. In the pink eyes, Suyu saw a scene that ordinary eyes could not see. There were red lines in the dark, intricate, involving everyone. Some red lines represented kinship, some represented friendship, some represented love, and some represented hatred. In short, all the creatures were connected by the red dust lines. Are these the red dust lines? Suyu whispered softly, holding his breath and looking down at himself. However, he saw the densely packed lines connecting him, leading to an endless area, leading to all directions. Suyu saw the red line between him and Xiaojingyu at a glance. The line was still there. It proved that Xiaojingyu was still alive. The stone that had been hanging in his heart for a long time finally fell. She still existed between heaven and earth, which was the greatest relief. Following the direction of the red line, Suyu looked deeply. This was where Xiaojingyu was, where he wanted to go. When he determined the direction of the red line, Suyu's expression became complicated. The Star River God Realm. She has always been in the Star River God Realm. Suyu was at a loss, puzzled, and uneasy. Since she is in the Star River God Realm, why didn't she show up? Is she trapped somewhere, or does she not want to see me? He thought that she had disappeared in the Star River God Realm, but it turned out that she had always been in the Star River God Realm. At this moment, there was a slight vibration at the other end of the red line. Such an abnormality made Suyu's heart tighten as he stared at the red line. However, the red line continued to tremble, and it became more and more rapid, as if the other end wanted to express something. Suyu's heart seemed to be grasped by something. Did something happen to Xiaojingyu? Suddenly, Suyu's mind flashed, and he remembered the rhythm and frequency of the red line one by one. Soon, the red line returned to calm. Suyu stared at the full rhythm and frequency on the ground, like a musical score, with ups and downs. Suyu glanced back and forth excitedly. In the end, he erased most of them, leaving only 7 notes. The rest of the notes were all repeated. For musical notes, a special language flickered in Suyu's mind. The Celestial Music Clan. The people of this clan only used musical notes to transmit messages, which became their language. Therefore, the sound they produced was beautiful music. Suyu translated the 7 Sanskrit notes into the Fairy Sound Clan's language. Brother Su, I'm waiting for you. Suyu was ecstatic, but he was also extremely worried. He was glad that it wasn't that Xiaojingyu didn't want to see him. He was worried that she was trapped somewhere and needed Suyu to see her in person. No matter what, many years of searching had finally yielded results. Xiaojingyu was trapped somewhere in the divine realm of the Star River, waiting for her. But where could she be? Where does that red line extend to? Without giving Su Yu a chance to see it clearly, the power of red dust dissipated, and the red dust eyes disappeared. Su Yu's heart was filled with anxiety. Where was she trapped? Is there any danger? But no matter what, he had to return to the divine realm of the Star River as soon as possible. The matter of the wizard tribe must be resolved as soon as possible. I must learn the sky-splitting yin and yang style, cure Yongye Chushue's injury, obtain the great desolation furnace, and refine the world annihilation plate with it. Only then can I return to the divine realm of the Star River. Su Yu's eyes shone brightly, and his expression became more determined. When he left the secret room, there was already a maid waiting outside. When she saw him come out, she immediately informed the two temple masters, the Wang clan master and Ling Wu. Su Yu was the only one who had heard the news of Fan Capital. They were anxious, and finally Su Yu came out. However, before they could speak, Su Yu first asked Ling Wu, "May I ask when the Moonwatch sect leader will come out?" Only by challenging the Moonwatch sect leader could Su Yu learn the sky-splitting yin and yang style. Ling Wu was stunned and said, "He has not come out yet. However, the sect leader is already preparing to fight with you." Hearing this, Su Yu's heart settled a little. The sooner the better. "Everyone, I will now talk about the situation in Fan Capital," Su Yu said. The Wang clan master was the most concerned, because Fan Capital was the closest to Xing Capital, and the two were comparable in strength. The worse the situation of Fan Capital was, the greater the danger that Xing Capital was about to encounter. "How many troops does Fan Capital have now?" the Wang clan master asked. Su Yu shook his head. "You should ask first if Fan Capital is still there." "What?" Hearing the implication, everyone present, whether it was the four rulers or the ordinary wizards, was in disbelief. The Wang clan master suddenly stood up and said incredulously, "Are you sure that Fan Capital has fallen?" Su Yu nodded. "Yes, I entered the dream of Chuwen, the second heir of the Chu clan in Fan Capital. I forced him to ask about the situation in Fan Capital. 90% of the wizards were slaughtered, and the remaining 10% were enslaved to help them build something." Hiss! There was only the sound of people gasping, and there was no other sound. Not only was Fan Capital broken, but the creatures in it were also slaughtered? To be honest, if these words had not come from Su Yu's mouth, they would have scoffed and never believed it. The Wang clan master trembled all over, and his old face showed deep shock. He said, This is not reasonable. The Chu clan has a tool inherited from the wizard ancestor, the demon subduing drum. Even if Nitian Guyun came in person, he might not be able to do anything. What's more, they also have the jade pendant with the power of the wizard ancestor. Once combined, they can erupt with destructive power, enough to repel Nitian Guyun and the army. Moreover, for many years, Fan Capital has plundered resources from all over the place, and has set up as many as 36,000 spells outside the city. If they were activated, no one would be able to break in. How could their city be breached in such a short period of time? This is not reasonable. However, in Su Yu's eyes, everything was too reasonable. The people in charge of the Chu clan are the Blind Elder and the Single-Armed Elder. They seem to be on good terms, but deep down, they aren't on good terms. I think the two of them will be fighting over the city and its people. Su Yu was regretting that he hadn't gotten rid of the two of them before he left. Secondly, Nitian Hanxing's use of troops is exceptionally strange. He arrived at Fan Capital like a bolt of lightning without anyone noticing. Hearing the first point, everyone's faces were gloomy, and they believed 80 to 90% of it. They knew in their hearts what kind of people the Chu clan were. They were a group of people who did not care about life or death for wealth. They could already imagine the scene of a last-minute struggle for power. As for the second point, they did not quite agree with it. The Wang clan master shook his head. No matter how good Nitian Hanxing is at using troops, It is impossible for him to ignore the 36,000 spells and appear directly in the city. Su Yu's eyes lit up. What's so difficult about bypassing the spells and directly entering the city? I have a way. Huh? Everyone was shocked, especially the Wang clan chief, who was in disbelief. That's impossible. Even if it's teleportation, it's impossible to teleport so many soldiers in at once. Furthermore, there's a formation outside, so they can't be teleported. Su Yu shook his head. Who said space transfer is needed? The Wang clan master pondered. The 36,000 spells are intercepted in the sky and underground, and it is impossible to bypass them. Su Yu said, Of course it is impossible for them to go into the sky, but it may not be possible to go into the ground. The Wang clan master was confused. Little friend Su, please explain clearly that the defense of the Qing capital is far inferior to that of the Fan capital. If they can bypass the defense of the Fan capital, I am afraid that the Qing capital will be in danger. It is very simple. I don't know if you remember that during the first war between the God Realm and the Wizard Tribe, the Wizard Tribe had built a large number of underground hiding bases to avoid the pursuit of the enemy who invaded the Blackwood Forest? Hearing this, everyone thought for a while. Most people were at a loss. Even Ling Wu, an old man who had been with the sect leader for a long time, was completely unaware. This incident happened too long ago, and it did not affect the overall situation. There were very few records of it in history, and few people would have paid attention to it. Only the two temple masters and the Wang clan master, who had the information of the Wizard Tribe for generations, knew far more history than ordinary people. Their expressions gradually became serious, and a trace of cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. Those underground bases have long been abandoned, but they have not been filled in. At least the underground passages near the Fan capital still exist. Su Yu said, I guess, among these underground passages, there must be one or even a few passages that lead directly to the interior of the Fan capital, right? Hearing this, everyone suddenly understood. So that was it. The secret underground hiding passage that the Wizard Tribe had almost forgotten had become the key to the enemy's attack on the Fan capital. Brother Su's wisdom, I admire you from the bottom of my heart. Wang Qingchen sincerely admired him. The rest of the people were also impressed. What Su Yu had done along the way was amazing and made his peers feel ashamed of their own inferiority. However, Su Yu's face was full of solemnity. Now is not the time to praise me. I have said that Nitian Hanxing is a god of war. When you were still exploring the situation of the Fan capital's defense, he had already occupied the Fan capital and slaughtered everyone. When you have learned that the Fan capital has fallen, why don't you guess where he is now and what he is doing? Hearing this, everyone was shocked. The Wang clan master's face changed dramatically, and he shouted, Men, retrieve the family's ancient scrolls and strictly investigate the tunnels of the past. Soon, boxes of dusty secret scrolls were brought up. Everyone found the construction drawings of the ancient roads, and sure enough, they found that one of them led directly to the interior of the Qing capital. Moreover, it was under the old site of the Wang clan's mansion, only 10,000 feet away from where they were now. That abandoned passage had been forgotten, and had not been filled up until now. Thinking of this, everyone suddenly felt a chill down their spines, and a chill ran down the soles of their feet. With Nitian Hanxing's military skills, while they were still shocked by the destruction of the Fan capital, it was likely that the other party had already entered the tunnel outside the city. Thinking of this, they felt as if a terrifying, man-eating beast was looking at them from the ground, ready to rush out and eat them at any time. The Wang clan master's hands and feet were cold, and he hurriedly shouted, Men, activate the defense, send a team of strong men, and completely block the abandoned tunnel. He was really scared, and his heart was beating wildly. He used to be like an immortal, but now he was panicking, as if he was facing a peerless enemy. Wait! Su Yu stopped him. Chapter 1446. The rest of the people, including the Wang clan master, stared at Su Yu. It was as if Su Yu was the master of this place, not the Wang clan master. Su Yu accepted their gazes calmly and said, "The defense can be activated, but the passageway doesn't need to be filled." The Wang clan master was taken aback. "Wouldn't that leave us with endless hidden dangers?" Su Yu smiled. "In a situation where we did not know about it, the abandoned tunnels could have become our fatal weakness. But now that we know about it, it is a great weapon to destroy our enemies." Some of the quick-witted people had already understood Su Yu's meaning, and shock appeared on their faces. What a big appetite! He actually planned to. Don't think that this kid has a mild temperament, but his ambition is so great that it's not something that you and I can guess. Be careful what you say, don't offend him. Yes, while we are still thinking about defending the city, he is already thinking about giving the invading enemy a fatal blow. Su Yu said, "We might as well give them a taste of their own medicine. Since Nitian Hanxing likes to use surprise attacks to win, we might as well use his favorite method to teach him an unforgettable lesson." Everyone understood tacitly, and after some hesitation, the Wang clan master agreed with Su Yu's plan. The abandoned tunnel was tens of thousands of zhang underground, and there was a formation suppressing it. Once the tunnel suddenly collapsed, even a powerful existence of the second heaven would be buried underground forever. If Nitian Hanxing launched a surprise attack using the underground tunnel, he would definitely be able to deal a devastating blow to him. Good, send someone to arrange the explosion talismans in the tunnel immediately. The Wang clan leader's eyes shone with excitement. Wait! Su Yu stopped him again. Clan Master Wang didn't dare to be negligent. He cupped his hands and said, "Please guide me, little friend Su." Since he had already called it guidance, it was obvious that he was sincerely convinced by Su Yu. Su Yu's words were concise and to the point. He looked around at the crowd and said, "It's not that I don't trust you, but how did Nitian Hanxing know about the underground passage? I have been to that passageway before. It is intricate and endless. Even if 1,000,000,000 soldiers were to enter it, it would be like a clay ox entering the sea. They would lose their sense of direction. They could accurately find the passageway to Fan Capital in a short period of time. Has anyone ever doubted it?" There was a traitor. Everyone was shocked. They were so shocked by the fall of Fan Capital that they had not carefully thought about the mystery behind it. Now that he thought about it carefully, without a spy to plan the direction for them, how could they have used such a surprise attack? There are traitors in the Fan Capital, but it doesn't mean that there aren't any among us. Su Yu's words were reasonable. Even if some people were dissatisfied, they felt that it was reasonable. The Wang clan master looked around at the crowd and said, "What little friend Su said makes sense. It's not that I don't trust you, but this is a serious matter. If the news of us ambushing Nitian Hanxing's army is leaked, then all our previous efforts will be in vain." He took out a tool from his sleeves. It was a pitch-black bronze man that emitted strange fluctuations. Everyone suddenly realized that their communication tools were all messed up. Someone tried to send a telepathic message. This is a device that can block messages unexpectedly. The quiet voice that was clearly a voice transmission was magnified by 10 times. When it entered everyone's ears, the person who sent the voice transmission was so frightened that his expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly said, I'm not a spy, I'm just curious." The Wang clan leader narrowed his eyes and used a sorcery spell to bind him. "This is an emergency. Anyone who is suspicious is not allowed to leave this house. Everyone, please stay in the house. Before the ambush is completed, you are not allowed to leave without permission. Otherwise, you will be regarded as a traitor, and everyone will gang up on you. How about that?" The Wang clan master said. In this regard, the 2 temple masters and Ling Wu agreed on the spot. Would the other juniors dare to resist? Naturally, they obeyed. The Wang clan master said, "Little friend, I want to ask you a favor." Su Yu said without thinking, "Sure, I'll help you ambush Nitian Hanxing." The Wang clan master was stunned. Before he spoke, Su Yu already knew what he was thinking. His heart was even more at ease. Handing over the task to such a person was truly reassuring. It was not that Su Yu was greedy, but he wanted to settle the matter of the wizard tribe as soon as possible and return to the Star River Divine Realm. Strangely, no one objected. Instead, most agreed. Other than the Wang clan master himself, no one present would be at ease. The two temple masters and Ling Wu, who knew if they had been bribed? Only the Wang clan master himself, whose interests were aligned with the family, would never collude with foreign enemies to invade the Qing capital. But Su Yu was an exception. What he had done had truly won their trust. If Su Yu was suspicious, then no one was trustworthy. I need a troop of soldiers who will absolutely obey my orders. The Wang clan master said, No problem. Qingchen, you will lead my army and carry out the mission with little friend Su. If anyone refuses to obey orders, kill without mercy. Wang Qingchen stood up and said, Yes, sir. The two left the hall, and the Wang clan master stroked his beard and said, I will guard this place with you and supervise each other until the ambush is completed. Everyone nodded slowly, except for one person, who had a strange look on his face. Wang Qingchen selected 10,000 soldiers and went with Su Yu to the former site of the Wang family's mansion. After some digging, they found a long-abandoned underground cave. It was unfathomably deep, and no one knew where it led. Wang Qingchen laughed. It's still interesting to follow Brother Su. Ambushing the God Realm army, just thinking about it makes me excited. You know, the army of the heaven-defying empire is known to be invincible in the God Realm. Su Yu stared at the abandoned underground passage and said, Let's get to work. Wang Qingchen waved his hand, and the soldiers behind him immediately took out the explosive runes from the warehouse and stuck them inside the abandoned passage. Now, they just had to wait for the arrival of Nitian Hanxing's army, then they could have a taste of this wonderful feeling. Unexpectedly, Su Yu said, Well, then let's detonate it and fill the tunnel to avoid future trouble. What? The soldiers were stunned, and so was Wang Qingchen. Brother Su, wait. Didn't you say that you wanted to ambush Nitian Hanxing's army in this way? What's the use of detonating it now? Wang Qingchen couldn't understand. Su Yu said nonchalantly, It's a big taboo for the military to use the same old tricks, especially since I've personally broken through them and appeared in the tunnel. The plan has already been discovered. If Nitian Hanxing still resorts to this plan, I'll have underestimated him. Nitian Hanxing's surprise attack is no longer an underground tunnel, but another trick, Su Yu said. When Wang Qingchen heard this, he felt that it made sense. Judging from the way Nitian Hanxing deployed his troops, it was often unexpected and unimaginable. It was indeed not his style to use the same strategy twice in a row. But Brother Su, then why did you say that in that hall? Wang Qingchen said, With my father in charge, the news can't be passed out. Su Yu shook his head. Don't be too superstitious about the tools of the wizard tribe. There are many unimaginable magical powers in the divine path, and the tools of the wizard tribe may not be able to stop them. It's better if there are no traitors among them. If there are traitors, they will be careless when they receive our message, and we can take action. There are only benefits to what I said, there is no harm. Wang Qingchen didn't believe it. The tools of the wizard tribe that his father took out were made with the method personally passed down by the wizard ancestors, without exception. Come with me, we will make other arrangements and give Nitian Hanxing a big surprise. In a dense forest somewhere in the Blackwood Forest, groups of dark armies quietly shuttled through the forest, quietly, without disturbing the nearby creatures. The faces of the soldiers were full of fortitude and coldness, and their actions were decisive and orderly. It was obvious that they were well-trained elite soldiers. In the army, there was a young man in fine clothes, with a dark complexion, walking at a moderate speed. His whole body was full of compelling defiance, and he had an air of arrogance. He was Nitian Hanxing. At that moment, a flying bird made of flames shuttled through the void and appeared directly in front of Nitian Hanshing. "Protect the Emperor!" the guard shouted. Nitian Hanshing scolded softly, "What are you panicking about? This is a secret communication technique specially used by the royal family, the art of deception." He crushed the flying bird, and a message jumped out from it and fell into Nitian Hanshing's ears. After listening, Nitian Hanshing looked up to the sky and laughed. "Suyu? I really can't underestimate you. You really guessed the reason for the destruction of Fan Capital, and you guessed that I might be launching a surprise attack on Xing Capital. It's a pity that I don't intend to use the same plan a second time. I'm afraid your plan to ambush me is going to fail." Nitian Hanshing sneered. "Do you think that only the underground tunnel can break through Xing Capital? You are so wrong. Ha ha ha, after all, I am a little better than you. Suyu, watch how I destroy Xing Capital and capture you alive." Nitian Hanshing looked up and laughed. After the army left, two heads popped out of a dark mountain. If Suyu was here, he would definitely recognize these two people. They were the two generals who were scared away by Suyu's tricks when he was trapped and killed in the Blackwood Forest. The white-faced general and Guocheng. Among them, the white-faced general had 4 superior extermination cannons taken away by Suyu. After these two men led the army to defect, they fell into the vast lost nation. Probably because they were heading in the same direction, the two of them met. Because they were in the same boat, the two of them joined forces. Now they had become an army of more than 1,000 people, and they also had 4 superior extermination cannons. The two of them went out to inquire about the news, and accidentally found Nitian Hanshing's army sneaking through the Blackwood Forest, heading straight for Xing Capital. "Hiss, it's the commander!" The white-faced general's face suddenly turned pale. He still had a lingering fear of the cruel commander of the past. Guocheng couldn't help but swallow his saliva and said resentfully, "Why are you still calling him commander? Do you think you can go back?" The white-faced general said, "It was a slip of the tongue, a slip of the tongue. Ever since I defected, I knew I couldn't go back. With his temperament, it would be a terrible end." "That's more like it," Guocheng said hatefully. "Nitian Hanshing made us afraid to return home, and we can only hide in the deep mountains and forests of the Lost Nation. From time to time, we have to face ferocious beasts and wizard tribes. Our people are getting fewer and fewer, and sooner or later, we will be exhausted and die in the Lost Nation." They had planned to find another place to live in the Lost Nation, but they found the cruelty of reality. The Blackwood Forest was extremely dangerous, far beyond the God realm. For example, last time they encountered 2 level 3 ferocious beasts, and 300 soldiers died. If this continued, they would die sooner or later. The white-faced general's eyes turned. "Why don't we seek refuge with the wizard tribe of Xing Capital? Suyu is doing so well in the wizard tribe, there's no reason we can't, right?" Guocheng's eyes lit up, and he said thoughtfully, "It is feasible, but Suyu was accommodated by them because he was jointly wanted by the 4 great empires. If we seek refuge with them, will they trust us?" The white-faced general smiled mysteriously. "Isn't that simple? What if we inform the wizard tribe about the attack of Nitian Hanshing's army?" Hearing this, Guocheng was shocked and his face lit up. Intuition told him that this method was feasible. After thinking about it, Guocheng said, "This is not enough. If possible, we can capture some important people and hand them over to the wizard tribe. This way, the possibility of winning their trust will be higher." The white-faced general said, "Oh? Important people. There are not many people important to Nitian Hanshing." Guocheng smiled mysteriously. You don't know this. Recently, Nitian Hanshing has married a woman, and she is very beautiful. Now she is on her way to the military camp. It just so happens that I arranged the route to escort the bride. If there are no accidents, they should have arrived at Sangto Mountain by now. If we intercept them now, it will be just in time." General Bai was not surprised by this. It was no secret that Nitian Hanxing liked women. It was not the first time that he had won a bride in the military camp. Every once in a while there would be brides sent from the god realm. However, he heard that this bride was different. Not only was she beautiful, but her identity was also special. Chapter 1447. Outside the city of Xing capital, Wang Qingchen and Su Yu stood side by side, and behind them stood 8 generals respectfully. They were the commanders of the soldiers who guarded each side. As old as they were, they respectfully obeyed the orders of the silver-haired youth. Brother Su, how will Nitian Hanxing attack Xing capital? Wang Qingchen could not help but be curious. The underground passage had collapsed, and there was a powerful formation outside the city that had been laid out for countless years. Nitian Hanxing had no choice but to break in. Su Yu stood on the clouds looking down at the surroundings and said, "His method is not that difficult to guess, but it is too crazy, and ordinary people will not think about it." Wang Qingchen understood, glanced at the soldiers behind him, and did not ask any more questions. 8 generals, act according to my orders. This time we will teach Nitian Hanxing a lesson. This arrangement took 3 days and 3 nights, and Su Yu came to the scene from time to supervise. Reporting to Marshal Su, "We have caught a sneaky enemy of the God realm," a commander came to report, carefully observing Su Yu's expression. Recently, many scouts from the God realm had been captured, and they were all dealt with on the spot by their commanders. This person had come to report to Su Yu. Knowing that something was wrong, Su Yu said, "Go on." The commander then said, "He claims to surrender to us, and has something to offer to show his loyalty. He only asks that the wizard tribe can accept him." A traitor? Su Yu was not surprised. Nitian Hanxing was too ruthless, and the slightest mistake by his generals would result in death or injury. If some generals with weak minds made mistakes, it was normal for them to defect. "You can also deal with this matter on your own." Su Yu granted them this authority. The commander said, "But the other party wants to see the Supreme Commander, which is you, Marshal Su." Su Yu smiled. "See me? Does he want to offer something special to gain the trust of me, the commander? Well, bring them to the barrack." Soon, outside the main tent of the Central Army, Guo Cheng was brought in. "To prevent you from harming the commander, answer outside the tent." The 2 commanders personally guarded him. Guo Cheng saw a figure sitting cross-legged inside the tent and thought, "He must be the supreme commander of the Xing capital wizard tribe, the Wang clan master? If I can gain his trust, it won't be a problem for me to find a place to settle down even if I don't want to achieve meteoric success." Having made up his mind, Guo Cheng immediately prostrated himself on the ground and said, "I am Guo Cheng, the former general under Nitian Hanxing's command. Greetings to the sorcerer tribe's commander-in-chief." Guo Cheng? Su Yu, who was in the tent, had already seen who it was with his transparent eye. He was really surprised. At that time, he used a little trick to escape from their encirclement, and this General Guo Cheng should have escaped. He didn't expect that there would be such a coincidence that he would run to Xingjing to seek refuge. With a hint of playfulness, Su Yu activated his divine power, slightly changed his voice, and said, "So, you betrayed Nitian Hanxing?" Guo Cheng knew that the critical moment had come. He answered carefully and righteously, reporting back to the marshal, "We feel deeply that Nitian Hanxing is cruel and inhumane, so we abandon the dark side for the light." "How can I believe that you are not spies sent by Nitian Hanxing?" Guo Cherngan suppressed his excitement and presented a small cavern world in the shape of a jade pendant. "My lord, you will understand when you see this." The soldiers passed the jade pendant to Su Yu's palm. His soul swept into the small cavern world, and Su Yu couldn't help but be surprised. "It's her?" In the small cavern world, a woman dressed in a red phoenix robe was imprisoned. She had an exquisite phoenix crown on her head, and her face was delicate and beautiful. It was a bride. What was even more unfortunate was that Su Yu happened to know the bride. She was none other than the princess of the Xue nation in the Northern Territory, Xue Xiaoman. With a look of surprise, Su Yu quietly put away the jade pendant and asked, "Who is she?" Reporting back to the commander, "She is the bride of the marriage alliance between the Northern Territory Xue nation and the heaven-defying empire, the princess of the Northern Territory Xue nation, Xue Xiaoman. Her identity is special, and she is a woman that Nitian Hanxing values. I think if the commander understands Nitian Hanxing's character, you should believe that we are not spies sent by him." What kind of person was Nitian Hanxing? He was lustful and refused to let go of even his own mother. He could be called a demon among men. In addition, his character was rebellious, and he would never give his woman to an outsider. "I believe in your sincerity," Su Yu said with a faint smile. Guo Cheng, who did not know what was going on outside, was overjoyed. "I have a presumptuous request, and I beg the commander to take me in. I have a group of brothers, as well as another general, who are willing to surrender to the commander and serve you." Su Yu stood up and chuckled across the tent. "Since you have surrendered to me with sincerity, I will treat you as distinguished guests. However, what kind of treatment do you want?" Guo Cheng's heart was set. The other party was the commander, and once he opened his mouth, no one could stop him. He would never go back on his word. The next step was to discuss the conditions. After thinking about it, Guo Cheng did not dare to ask for too much, but he was not willing to be too low either. He rolled his eyes and said, "I heard that Su Yu from the God Realm is treated well in the wizard tribe. We dare not ask for too much, and only ask that we be treated the same as Su Yu." Hearing this, the two commanders' eyes widened, and they thought to themselves, "My goodness, you really dare to ask for it? There is only one commander in Xing capital. Are you going to share half of the military power with him? Presumptuous!" One of the commanders scolded, and he was about to drag him away. Guo Cheng was shocked and hurriedly said, "Wait. If my request is too high, it's okay to lower it a little. It doesn't matter if our treatment is worse than Su Yu's." The two commanders laughed angrily. A little lower than the commander, wasn't that the deputy commander? He was still riding on their necks. Seeing that the two commanders were still angry, Guo Cheng was aggrieved and said, "Anyway, I am a level 3 deity. Can't I even get the treatment of an ordinary deity?" The two commanders did not care, for fear of angering Su Yu, and hurriedly dragged him away. "Wait." Inside the tent, Su Yu said, and walked out of the tent with a smile. "General Guo Cheng, I trust you have been well since we last met." Guo Cheng was stunned. How did this voice change? And it sounded a little familiar? Guo Cheng took a closer look, and his eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He said in shock, "Su Yu! Presumptuous! Call the commander by his name." The two commanders kicked him to the ground. Guo Cheng fell to the ground and his face was full of shock. You are their commander?" Such a ridiculous thing was presented in front of him. Su Yu waved his sleeves, and a gentle force helped him up. He said with a faint smile, "So, I am afraid that if I give you the same treatment as me, the position of commander will not be enough for 3 people." Hearing this, Guo Cheng was shocked, and immediately became alert and his face turned pale. They had besieged Su Yu that day. If he wanted to bring up old scores, thinking of this, Guo Cheng wanted to cry but had no tears. This was really like walking 1,000 miles into a tiger's mouth. Chapter 1448. Unexpectedly, Su Yu laughed. "General Guo, please rise. You have not caused substantial harm to me, and we are not fated to be together. I have no need to put you to death. On the contrary, I am in need of help. If you can help me, there will be benefits that you can't imagine." Guo Cheng could hardly believe his ears and looked at Su Yu blankly. He had been under Nitian Hanxing for a long time, and he was used to it. The slightest mistake would result in death. He tried to stop Su Yu, but he was forgiven. Are you serious?" "Absolutely." Guo Cheng's dazed eyes gradually brightened, and he knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, banging the ground. Su. Marshal Su is magnanimous. Guo Cheng will never forget it. Haha, let the rest of the defectors come together. Speaking of which, we are all in the same boat, Su Yu said. Guo Cheng was moved. Yes, they could not return to the God realm, and they were all in the same boat. He cupped his fists and immediately returned, bringing General Whiteface and all the soldiers. General Whiteface was also nervous. Fortunately, Su Yu was hospitable and had no intention of harming them. After a banquet, Guo Cheng and General Whiteface looked at each other and said in unison, Marshal Su, if there is anything we can do for you, please let us know. We will not hesitate to go through fire and water. You don't have to go through fire and water. You came to me for safety. How can I let you encounter danger again? Su Yu smiled mysteriously. The two were relieved. They were most afraid that Su Yu would not retaliate, but secretly send them to the front line as cannon fodder. However, although you don't have to go through fire and water, you still have to suffer some hardships, Su Yu said slowly. Their hearts, which had just been raised, suddenly sank and their hearts turned cold. Sure enough, it had come. Guo Cheng said with a bitter face, Sir, please give me your orders. Haha, Brother Wang, it's up to you. Su Yu smiled at Wang Qingchen. Wang Qingchen patted his chest. Ha ha ha, I may not be able to do other things, but this, hundreds of millions of miles away from Xing capital, the soldiers of the God realm were quietly waiting in the Black Forest. Nitian Hanxing stood on a boulder, sitting cross-legged, with a beautiful girl in his arms, kneading her smooth, snow-white skin. Whoosh, 3 figures exuding an earth elemental aura descended and knelt on one knee. Reporting to the commander, we have already followed the plan and are ready. We are only waiting for the commander's order. Nitian Hanxing reluctantly grabbed a handful of the young girl's soft breasts, and reluctantly let go. When he looked at the 3 of them, his lecherous expression changed, and his whole body was filled with a fierce light. Have you been discovered by Su Yu? Commander, Su Yu is busy making arrangements in the passageway that leads directly to the city. He has no time to care about us. We can be sure of that. Only then did Nitian Hanxing let out a smile. All right? Well done. Once we conquer Xingjing, the 3 of you can have your pick of the beauties in the city. The 3 of them were grateful on the surface, but they were smiling bitterly in their hearts. How could they dare to touch a truly beautiful woman? Fan Capital was the best example. After it was breached, the young witches who were captured were the first to be examined by Nitian Hanxing. He would then pick the rest, and it was their turn to choose. If anyone had taken the beautiful female captive along the way, they would have crossed Nitian Hanxing's line. So far, there were already 3 commanders who could not control their lower bodies, and more than 10 generals of the fourfold heaven with high status, who had been beheaded because of this. No one dared to voice their anger. Swish! Swish! At that moment, 3 soldiers from the God realm hurriedly flew over from the horizon, covered in blood, as if they had been ambushed. Commander, this is bad. After the 3 of them landed, they knelt on the ground, trembling with fear, their faces filled with terror. Nitian Hanxing glanced at the clothes of the 3 of them. Which bride are you transporting? It's the princess of the Xue nation in the northern territory, Xue Xiaoman. Huh? Nitian Hanxing's eyes suddenly froze. Then what happened to you? The 3 of them trembled. We were ambushed by the rebel army of the God realm at Zongtou Mountain. The escort team was defeated, and the bride was taken away. Bang! Nitian Hanxing suddenly stood up, and a layer of pressure that was visible to the naked eye swept over. The 6 people present were all shaken by the tyrannical pressure, and they spat out blood on the spot. The 3 Earth Attribute soldiers from before were also undeserving of this disaster. Who did it? Nitian Hanxing's voice was cold, his face angry and gloomy. It's the rebel army, Guo Cheng and General Whiteface. Nitian Hanxing's eyes were filled with endless murderous intent. It's those two traitors. Where are they going? They went to Xing capital. Nitian Hanxing's eyes became even colder. Xing capital? Humph. They used my woman as a proof of allegiance. When did this happen? 4 days ago. Hearing this, Nitian Hanxing stared at them coldly. Why are you only telling me now? We were chased and separated, and we were lost in the Black Forest for a few days. Just now, Nitian Hanxing's eyes were filled with murderous intent. There are no useless people under me, Nitian Hanxing. You can't even do such a small thing as escorting the bride. You are worse than useless people. The three of them were horrified and hurriedly begged for mercy. Please have mercy, Commander, we are willing to make amends for our sins. No need, death is the best way for you to atone for your sins. Nitian Hanxing attacked violently, and the three of them disappeared in an instant, their bodies and souls destroyed. The 3 Earth Attribute soldiers watched in horror, killing without saying a word. The 3 soldiers who escorted the bride were Nitian Hanxing's trusted aides, and they had escorted the bride here many times. Even if they had no merit, they had worked hard. But Nitian Hanxing killed them without batting an eyelid. The 3 of them felt a chill in their hearts, and they were extremely uneasy, fearing that one day they would end up like him. Pass my order. Prepare to attack Xing capital. With a single order, the tens of millions of troops who were resting immediately became murderous, and the whole army acted in unison, speeding towards Xing capital. On the city wall of Xing capital, Su Yu stood at the top of the city wall, staring into the distance. At this time, Wang Qingchen quickly handed over a broken wizard tool and said, "One of the scouts is dead." Crack, crack. After a few breaths, 2 scouts died one after another. Wang Qingchen's eyebrows twitched slightly, and his face gradually became solemn. It's an enemy attack. And the enemy is in a straight line, extremely fast. Each scout was tens of thousands of miles apart from each other, and they were killed almost at the same time, which was enough to show that they were attacked at the same time. The enemy's front line stretched for more than tens of thousands of miles. How huge was the enemy army? Wang Qingchen's heart trembled. It was the first time he had faced such a vast war, and he had lost his cool. He noticed that the same was true of the 8 commanders, who were no longer calm and collected like before the war. The enemy's offensive was beyond expectations, and it was shocking. However, when he looked at Su Yu, he was ashamed and forced himself to calm down. Because at this moment Su Yu was calm, and his eyes were dull and unruffled, as if he had experienced countless similar battles. Act according to the plan, and Xing capital will be safe, Su Yu said lightly, and there was a strange power in his voice that made the soldiers involuntarily calm. Nitian Hanxing, is the battle between you and me finally coming? Su Yu's eyes echoed with a trace of coldness. They had collided many times, but not once had they really fought. Chapter 1449. Beep beep. At that moment, a wizard tool flickered rapidly in Su Yu's palm. It was a strong warning from a scout 100,000 miles away. Crack. Then, the life card in Wang Qingchen's hand made a slight cracking sound. It was the scout who had just sent out an urgent message and died immediately. Beep beep. Soon, the scout 50,000 miles away issued a warning and died soon after. Then, it was 30,000 miles, 20,000 miles, 10,000 miles. The pounding heartbeats of the generals could be heard on the city wall. The extreme pressure made them feel extremely heavy. The enemy's momentum was too fierce and terrifying. They were close. 5,000 miles. They could already sense the violent movement coming from the ground, and even the entire city was shaking. The formation seal outside the city was immediately activated, stabilizing the shaking city wall. 3,000 miles. They could only hear the endless roar of thunder, accompanied by the increasingly violent tremors of the earth. It was as if a great calamity was coming, striking deep into the soul. Even if the formation was fully activated, it could not stop the earth-shattering roar. 1,000 miles. They could already see a layer of rolling black waves filling the sky and the earth at the junction of heaven and earth. It was like a boundless wave crashing head-on. Under the endless black waves, the huge Qing capital was like a small boat, seemingly insignificant and could capsize at any time. The momentum that could topple the sky and overturn the seas caused the 8 commanders, who had just calmed down, to fall into extreme panic again. How could there be so many enemies? Not good. Things are not looking good. Even during the war between the wizard tribe and the god realm, there were not so many soldiers. Our formation alone cannot stop them. Panic was like weeds growing wildly in the hearts of the people. On the city wall, some of the pale-faced soldiers could not help but retreat. Just as they retreated, a golden light flew over and beheaded them. Retreat at the last minute, behead. Shake the morale of the army, behead. Su Yu's eyes were cold and he said in a low, cold voice, "The enemy is coming at us fiercely. If you retreat, will they let you go?" The bloody scene and the cold words made the panicking people tremble. Yes, this was not a battle between tribes, where they could surrender if they admitted defeat. This was a war between the wizard tribe and the god realm. There was no surrender, only killing and being killed, defending the city and being slaughtered. The fate of Fan Capital was the best example. Having been provoked by Su Yu's words, the general on the city wall clenched his teeth and suppressed his fear. 500 miles. The sky and earth turned pitch black as they were engulfed by the black waves. That doomsday-like scene made people feel despair. Rumble. The sky was filled with thunder, shaking Xinjiang to the point that it was on the verge of collapse. All the living beings in the city fled into their houses in fear. They hugged each other and prayed that disaster would not befall them. Perhaps their prayers had come true, and a miracle had actually occurred. The black wave that covered the sky and covered the earth rushed towards Qing capital city. However, right before it reached Xinjiang city, it suddenly split into two and bypassed Xinjiang city. Accompanied by a thunderous roar that whistled past his ears, the black torrent gradually faded away, and so did the thunderous roar. Everyone was stunned. The enemy had left? What happened to the promised great battle? Only the generals on the city wall understood what had happened. The faces of the 8 commanders were pale, and their hearts were still beating wildly, as if they had just passed by the gates of hell. "Commander, that's a beast tide?" One of the commanders couldn't believe his eyes. Su Yu said coldly, "You still can't see clearly at such a close distance?" "It was a beast tide." Wang Qingchen shuddered. Was it a beast tide created by Nitian Hanxing? Indeed, the huge black wave was not the army that they had imagined, but countless different kinds of ferocious beasts. The black wood forest radiated across most of the lost nation, and there was no shortage of ferocious beasts. They did not know what method they used to drive such a huge beast tide through the blackwood forest. Of course, these beast tides were enough to crush a single creature in an instant, but against Qing capital city, they could only take a detour. Why did he do this? Wang Qingchen said, "If the beast tide could destroy a capital, we would have ceased to exist in hundreds of millions of years. With the defense of the 2 capitals, the beast tide was of no help." Su Yu's bright eyes flashed with a deep light and he said calmly, "Do you still need to think about it? Of course, it was Nitian Hanxing's old trick, a diversion. I think, when the beast tide attracted us, they did something behind us, right?" "What?" Wang Qingchen suddenly looked back at the other side of Qing capital city. They were located in the east, facing Fan capital. If the enemy attacked, in theory, it must be from the east. But in the west, they did not focus on defense. At the west city gate, the giant gate was guarded by the elite soldiers of the wizard tribe, especially the pivot of the formation outside the gate, which was under the protection of 3 white-haired old wizard tribe elders. Whoever wanted to destroy the pivot and the formation would have to step over their dead bodies. At this time, the beast tide came. The boundless momentum was as terrible as the end of the world, shrouding the sky above the west city gate in darkness. It was frightening. At this moment, one of the elder's eyes suddenly became fierce, and the fluctuations of sorcery energy on the surface of his body dissipated, and a burst of divine power broke out. It was an extremely pure level 3 divine power. He let out a loud roar and suddenly attacked. The two elders were not on guard, and their bodies were smashed by him, seriously injured and on the verge of death. "Old Xiao, how are you?" "You are not Old Xiao, who are you?" They were shocked to find that Old Xiao, who accompanied them day and night, was a citizen of the God realm. The fluctuations of sorcery energy on his body were emitted by the special clothes-fitting clothes. "Old Xiao? Ha!" The man from the God realm held his hands behind his back and sneered, "I have already sent him on his way." As he spoke, his face changed. It was a special disguise technique. He killed Old Xiao and took his place in the wizard tribe. What was more amazing was that if Su Yu was here, he would definitely recognize who he was. Impossible. Xing Capital has never taken in strangers from the God realm. How did you break in without a sound, kill Old Xiao, and take his place? The man from the God realm laughed mockingly. Why do I have to do it without a sound? My companions and I were brought in by you guys. The two elders were stunned, and immediately their eyes were filled with disbelief. They said in shock, "Are you the group of spies that were captured in the city last time?" It was because of that incident that Xing Capital was under martial law. "But weren't you locked up in the prison? How did you get out?" The man from the God realm sneered. "Someone helped us in secret, of course." As he spoke, his expression turned cold, and his figure attacked the two elders like lightning, injuring them on the spot. "Brothers, do it! It's time to show off!" The man from the God realm yelled. On the western city wall, a fierce fight broke out immediately, and dozens of screams were heard. More than 30 strong men from the God realm tore off the disguise of the wizard tribe and revealed their identities. With lightning speed, they killed the guards closest to the city gate and quickly took over the opening mechanism of the city gate. The man from the God realm yelled, "Open the city gate immediately and welcome the great commander into the city." He himself stepped on the pivot of the formation, intending to destroy it. However, right at that moment, the man from the God realm suddenly felt his body tremble, as if he had been targeted by something terrible. Looking back, it was a superior extermination cannon that was fully charged with energy. It was pushed out from an inconspicuous corner and aimed at the man from the God realm. Behind the superior extermination cannon, there were two people standing on each side. They were Guo Qing and General Bai. Guo Qing put on a fake smile and said, "Haha, my lord, you really have incredible foresight. You knew in advance that Nitian Hanxing would use a diversion strategy, and that the West Gate was the main target of Nitian Hanxing's attack." General Bai clapped his hands and laughed, full of admiration. The most amazing thing is that he also knew that there was something wrong with the few spies that he had captured previously. He specifically ordered us to wait here, saying that they would definitely appear here. Hearing that, the man from the God realm was shocked. How could he know that there was something wrong with us? General Bai said, "Because my lord felt that you leaked the news too easily. You spilled the news that Fan Capital was surrounded by the God realm army so easily. That was your biggest flaw." The man from the God realm was surprised. "Who is your commander?" Guo Qing chuckled. "Don't tell me you don't know Su Yu's name?" "What? It's him, the Great Western Alliance Master." The man from the God realm turned pale with fright. At the same time, he was filled with hatred. His face was filled with unforgettable hatred. Guo Qing and General Bai looked at each other. The Great Western Alliance Master? This man was very valuable. They had to capture him alive and hand him over to Su Yu. "Brothers, light up the weapons!" The two generals yelled and pushed out another 3 superior extermination cannons from the corner. The huge black muzzles of the cannons shrouded the crowd. 4 superior extermination cannons were enough to destroy them 4 times over. The result was no surprise. They all surrendered. The small rebellion was subdued unknowingly. However, if Su Yu had not predicted the enemy's moves, the small rebellion would have been enough to destroy Qing capital. The formation was broken, the city gates were opened, and Qing capital would have the same fate as Fan capital. As early as when they attacked Fan capital, they had already arranged for people from the God realm to sneak into the city. This was not an impromptu plan. It was obvious that the plan was far-reaching and the strategy was appropriate. Outside the West Gate, in the Black Forest, the endless black tide of beasts parted again, bypassing the black armored army and escaping. The black armored army was tens of millions, each of them fierce and capable. They were the true elites of the heaven-defying empire. As expected, they were lying in ambush in the direction of the West Gate, waiting for the signal from inside to rush into the city immediately. Unfortunately, when the time came, there was no signal. Nitian Hanxing laughed mockingly. "Have we been discovered? Su Yu, you are quite smart. You even discovered this backup plan. You are qualified to compete with me on the battlefield. However, the show has just begun. My real surprise is yet to come." Su Yu led the many generals and moved to the West Gate. Guo Cheng and General Bai immediately presented a group of captives, their faces flushed. "My lord, we followed your arrangements and captured this group of prisoners who should have been in the dungeon." Looking at them, the 8 commanders quickly recognized them, especially Zheng Laodao, who had personally captured them. He said in surprise, "Weren't they imprisoned in the dungeon? Who let them out?" But he quickly shut his mouth, because their commander, Su Yu, had a strange look in his eyes. He stared straight at the captive people from the God realm and said with a faint smile, "This world is really small. I didn't expect to meet you outside the Qing River." Chapter 1450. He stared at Su Yu, his eyes full of hatred. His demonic energy surged as he said, "It really is you, Su Yu. I didn't expect the traitor caught in the city half a month ago to be you, Admiral Whitebone," Su Yu said. "One of the 10 great generals of the demon dimension, together with the demonic god of 6 paths, the book deity and Kalin against Su Yu. In the end, he was thrown into the whirlpool of the spirit pool and fell into the lost ancient god realm. He didn't expect to meet him here." Admiral Whitebone said, "You are as troublesome as ever. You saw through us so easily." When he heard that the traitors were caught and quickly confessed that Fan capital was surrounded, Su Yu was suspicious. Would the God realm send traitors who couldn't withstand interrogation? At the very least, they should have placed a seal in their minds. Once they were caught, they would be killed instantly. It was as if they had been caught on purpose. Combined with the fact that Nitian Hanxing liked to use unexpected methods, Su Yu was on guard and set up an ambush. Sure enough, there was something wrong with their capture. "But don't even think about getting any information out of me." Admiral Whitebone's body suddenly shook, as if something hidden deep within his body had been shattered. The surface of his body quickly turned jet black, and from jet black to dark purple. He had been poisoned. "Su Yu." Admiral Whitebone laughed grimly. "You have made us so miserable. Just you wait, someone will come to take your life." After saying that, he foamed at the mouth, his eyes rolled back, and he died instantly. The rest of the captives also died from the poison. It happened so suddenly that they were caught off guard. In the blink of an eye, there was only a group of corpses left on the ground. Su Yu was lost in thought. Who was the person that Admiral Whitebone said would come to take his life? Nitian Guyun? The 4 great empires of the God realm? Zheng Laodao examined the corpses, and his face sank. "I was careless. They were poisoned in their internal organs, so they didn't notice when they were captured. What a shame that I didn't get them to confess to the traitor who released them from the dungeon. Although they were dead, they still left a hidden danger." Recalling the danger here, several commanders were worried. If Su Yu hadn't been so far-sighted, the city would have been conquered by the soldiers of the God realm. Wang Qingchen couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Brother Su, you have a godlike foresight. No matter how good that Nitian Hanxing is at commanding his troops, it is still child's play in front of you. The commanders agreed with him. What they were more looking forward to was whether Nitian Hanxing would give up after he had foiled his conspiracy. Expressionless, Su Yu walked over the corpses and came to the top of the city wall. Looking at the silent blackwood forest, he said, Nitian Hanxing has been planning this for a long time. He definitely has more than one plan to attack the city. This is just the beginning. Don't be careless. Before he finished speaking, an ink-black pillar of light suddenly shot out from the black forest in front of him. Tens of thousands of runes flickered inside the light pillar, and they actually contained a special power that could restrain the formation. Bang! The beam of light bombarded the array formations, causing hundreds of them to tremble at the same time, emitting a rapid buzzing sound. What is this? Zheng Laodao and the other commanders turned pale with fright. A single strike had shaken over 100 formations. They had never heard of such a bizarre power. There was a rumble in the black forest. Large swathes of trees collapsed and the earth cracked open. A giant pangolin with a metallic luster drilled out from the ground. High-level formations were carved on the surface of the pangolin's body, constantly rotating. A black cannon barrel 10 feet thick protruded from the pangolin's mouth. It was rapidly accumulating pitch-black energy, ready to fire a second shot. A weapon of the ancient civilization. Su Yu's brows loosened slightly. The metallic pangolin had no life force, and it relied entirely on the special crystals in its body to provide energy. Zheng Laodao stared at it for a long time, his face extremely somber. I remember now, this thing appeared during the Great War between the wizard tribe and the god realm. It's a top-notch weapon of the civilization that specializes in breaking formations, the formation-destroying beast. Back then, how many impregnable tribes had their divine statues easily destroyed by the formation-destroying beast? Even the defenses of my Xing capital were almost penetrated by the formation-destroying beast. His soliloquy caused everyone present to turn pale with fright, their faces solemn. Sure enough, Su Yu was right. Nitian Hanxing had come prepared, and there was more than one way to attack the city. However, for many years, the formations of my Xing capital have been reinforced, and they are no longer the same as they were in the past. A formation-destroying beast can do nothing to us. Unexpectedly, just as he finished speaking, another violent movement came from the blackwood forest. Another patch of trees collapsed, and a formation-destroying beast drilled out from the ground. The second one. Rumble. Another patch of the blackwood forest collapsed. The third one. Rumble. Rumble. One after another, the entire blackwood forest in the west continued to collapse, and formation-destroying beasts drilled out from the ground one after another. There were more than a dozen of them. Patter! The long knife in Zheng Laodao's hand fell to the ground abruptly, crashing against the deathly silent city wall with a distant echo. One of them could shake the city wall, and a dozen of them. The great army of the god realm did not give them any time to consider. Once the dozen formation-destroying beasts appeared, they immediately launched a powerful attack to destroy the formations. Rumble! Dozens of pitch-black light beams bombarded the city wall. The formations were no longer vibrating, but began to shatter. The three outermost formations were the first to be blasted into pieces. At the same time, the enemy's second wave of attack came. Boom! Another 3 layers of defense formations were shattered. If this went on, all the formations would be destroyed in less than an hour. Su Yu said, "Activate the backup formation." The 3 commanders immediately came to the pivot of the formation and instilled powerful sorcery energy into it. The 3 broken formations recovered rapidly after being replenished with energy. Only then did the people on the city wall feel slightly more at ease. "Take turns, continue to replenish sorcery energy," Su Yu ordered. Zheng Laodao and the other 2 commanders took turns to replenish sorcery energy into the pivot to speed up the recovery of the formations. Only then did they manage to keep the formations from being further destroyed. However, it would be disadvantageous to Su Yu's side in the long run. The sorcery energy required to replenish the formations was immense, and it required the sorcery energy of a level 3 wizard. Their level 3 wizards were the main fighting force. If they were to be depleted like this, it would be a conspiracy. General Guo, General Bai, Su Yu bellowed. The two of them understood tacitly and leaped onto the arena with 4 superior extermination cannons. Including Su Yu's 4, there were a total of 8 superior extermination cannons. Brothers, follow us. The 2 generals led 8 soldiers and leaped off the city wall. They passed through the formations and activated the superior extermination cannons at the foot of the city wall. 8 superior extermination cannons imbued with immense power were fired at the same time. However, they were not shooting at the formation-destroying beasts, but in the same direction. 8 streaks of violent, destructive energy bombarded an inconspicuous corner of the Black Forest from a distance. However, when the first streak of energy landed in that direction, a pale yellow defensive light screen appeared and blocked the attack. The people on the city wall were overjoyed. It meant that the target of the cannons was definitely not an ordinary person. It was most likely where the commander was. The defensive light screen could withstand the first attack, but what about the second, the third, all the way up to the 8th? Boom! With a dull thud, the pale yellow light screen shattered abruptly. A few furious roars erupted from within, and more than a dozen extremely powerful deity auras flickered. They were 13 level 3 deities with powerful auras. They were protecting a dark-skinned, wild-looking young man as they flew into the sky. Nitian Hanxing. The 8 commanders all recognized the wild-looking young man. He was none other than the commander who led the great army of the God realm this time, Nitian Hanxing. Su Yu's face was expressionless as he ordered indifferently, "Continue, don't stop." How could Guo Cheng and General Bai dare to stop? They continued to order the soldiers to activate the superior extermination cannons. Boom, boom, boom. Another 8 streaks of destructive energy bombarded Nitian Hanxing. Great Marshal, retreat. The 13 commanders' expressions were grave. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't understand how their location could be accurately discovered. As they spoke, the 3 commanders flew out and joined forces to block the bombardment of the superior extermination cannon. However, the power of the superior extermination cannon was too strong for them to resist. They only managed to resist for a moment before they were blasted into dust by the superior extermination cannon. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Nitian Hanxing and the remaining 10 commanders escaped from the bombardment range of the superior extermination cannon. Nitian Hanxing's eyes were cold as he looked into the depths of the sky. There was a faintly discernible eye overlooking the earth, as if it could see through them. They fled, but the superior extermination cannon did not stop its attack. Under Su Yu's precise positioning, it continued to bombard the important personnel of the army. Not long after, 4 or 5 level 3 commanders suffered from the destructive blow and perished on the spot. The number of ordinary soldiers who died could not be counted. No matter how well they hid, they could not escape the destructive blow of the 8 civilizational weapons. The casualties were extremely heavy. Looking at the situation, the great army of the God realm had to retreat. However, at this moment, Su Yu suddenly ordered, "Come back immediately." Guo Cheng and General Bai were in the midst of killing and were slightly stunned. However, due to Su Yu's authority, they could only lead the soldiers and the 8 superior extermination cannons back resentfully. Unexpectedly, as soon as they left, dozens of destructive forces shot out from the depths of the Black Forest. That was also the power of the superior extermination cannon. Another patch of forest was flattened, revealing the long-hidden superior extermination cannons lined up in a row. There were as many as 30 of them. The pitch-black holes were aimed at the place where Guo Cheng and General Bai had just stood. The two of them looked at each other and shuddered. Fortunately, they retreated quickly. Otherwise, they would have died there together with the cannons. Nitian Hanxing frowned slightly and said coldly, Su Yu really has some tricks up his sleeves. He forced me to use the siege weapons. The original intention of the 30 superior extermination cannons was to be launched immediately the moment the formation was broken. They were to kill all the leaders on the city walls, leaving them without a leader. This tactic was extremely effective in Fan Capital. However, Su Yu's precise attack combined with the heavenly eyes forced Nitian Hanxing to expose their existence. Execute the third plan. Nitian Hanxing yelled, Attack the city from the front. Walala, in the Black Forest, the neat and sonorous sound of metal rubbing against each other rang out. It was the sound of millions of soldiers in black armor, waiting for orders to get up and prepare for battle. Waves of murderous aura erupted from the Black Forest. Vaguely, countless heads could be seen moving in the Black Forest like a great river, rolling rapidly. Chapter 1451. Boom. Boom. The formation destruction beasts and the 30 superior extermination cannons fired at the same time. The peerless destructive power bombarded the defensive formation, shattering 10 layers in an instant. Focus all your energy on one point, fire. Nitian Hanxing commanded from afar. Suddenly, the earth-shattering bombardment concentrated on the tear, shattering another 10 layers. 20 of the 100 layers of defensive formations were shattered in an instant. Gather the level 3 wizards in the city and take turns to repair the formation. Su Yu ordered immediately. Several commanders took over and immediately instilled sorcery energy into the formation. 10 layers of the formation were quickly restored. However, right at that moment, the Black Army surged out of the Black Forest like a tidal wave and squeezed into the gap in the formation. They were all carrying artifacts that could restrain the formation, which greatly hindered the recovery of the formation. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the enemy bombarded again and shattered another 10 layers of the formation. Part of the enemy army sped up and poured in, while the rest of the army interfered with the repair of the formation with the artifacts they carried. They advanced step by step, and no matter how hard the formation in the city tried to repair it, it was useless. This was what Su Yu meant when he said that the most difficult moment had come. Northwest Army, get ready to attack. Following Su Yu's order, Zheng Laodao, one of the 8 commanders, gripped his long knife and led 1,000,000 soldiers to the bottom of the city wall. They confronted the surging Black Army through the formation that was about to be broken. 10 breaths later, with a violent roar, a huge gap was torn open in the formation. The murderous army of the God Realm approached the city like a flood and ferocious beast, attacking the city wall with the divine weapons in their hands. Combined with the superior extermination cannons, they instantly blasted a huge gap in the city wall. However, what awaited them was the long-prepared wizard army. The wizard army, which was surging with dark gray sorcery energy, collided with the black tide. The two armies quickly engaged in a fierce battle. The enemy's superior extermination cannons and formation destruction beasts stopped attacking to prevent further damage, and turned to attack another area. Soon, another large gap was torn open in the formation, and the endless Black Army poured in. Northeast Army, attack! Su Yu yelled. Another army of 1,000,000 soldiers poured into the narrow gap and fought with the invading army. Southwest Army, Southeast Army, North Army, get ready! Su Yu issued military orders in an orderly manner. In the face of a precarious situation, he did not panic. At this moment, the only person who could not panic was Su Yu. As the city walls were breached one after another, the soldiers in the city scattered into the gaps and attacked the invading army with all their might. Both sides were in a killing frenzy, especially the sorcerer tribe. All of them used their lives and blood to fight with their last bit of strength. Even if they were to die, they had to injure the enemy a little and fight for a chance for their compatriots behind them. This was because if the Divine Realm's army was defeated, they would lose a victory. If they failed, they would lose billions of their compatriots. The two sides fought for 3 days and 3 nights, and both sides suffered casualties in the hundreds of thousands. The boundless number of corpses had raised the ground by more than 100 feet. The soldiers behind them all stood on the corpses of their compatriots and continued to fight. The blood that flowed like a river evaporated under the high temperature of the scorching sun, forming layers of blood-colored mist that shrouded the entire Qing capital. From afar, it looked like a city of blood. It was extremely demonic. The God Realm soldiers had been attacking for a long time without success, so they had long since shifted their focus to the north, south, east, and west, fighting in all 4 directions. Although the resistance of the sorcerer tribe in Xinjiang was strong and they were well prepared, the army of the God Realm had been planning this for a long time. The number of soldiers was as high as 10 million. When one side's soldiers were almost wiped out, a new army would immediately enter and continue fighting. On the other hand, the wizard tribe's army was limited in strength, less than 30% of the enemy. After a long period of fighting, the fatal weakness of the wizard tribe's lack of manpower was gradually exposed. There were already 8 gaps in the city walls that had been breached by the Divine Realm's army, and they had broken into the city. Hearing this news, the people of Qing capital were in a panic and scattered in all directions. Nitian Hanxing was even more sarcastic. The initiative has fallen into my hands. Su Yu, even if you are the reincarnation of the god of war, don't even think about turning the tables. At this moment, a few more reports of success came in. The God Realm's army was like a hot knife through butter, and the wizard tribe's soldiers were retreating in defeat. Half of the gaps had fallen, and more than 5 million God Realm's army had poured into the city. Half of the army had broken into the city. What did this mean? It meant that the outcome had been decided. Nitian Hanxing clapped his hands and laughed. All-out attack. Rumble. However, right at this moment, the entire earth rumbled, and a golden statue of a deity suddenly broke out of the ground beneath the city. The statue of a deity was 10 million feet tall, piercing through the clouds, extremely majestic. That face belonged to the wizard ancestor of the wizard tribe. Waves of pure wizard power emitted waves that made people's hearts palpitate. Looking at this object, Nitian Hanxing's eyes narrowed. The divine artifact of the Wang clan of Qing capital, the sky-reaching ancestral statue. Isn't this thing lost? The Chu clan of Fan capital had the legacy of the wizard ancestor, and so did the Wang clan. However, the legacy of the wizard ancestor of the Wang clan was rumored to have been lost a long time ago. At least that was the information Nitian Hanxing received. After the sky-reaching ancestral statue appeared, it immediately shot out a thick golden light, enveloping the entire Qing capital. From afar, it looked like a giant inverted bowl, firmly protecting Qing capital within it. Some of the God Realm's soldiers who were rushing in through the gap were caught off guard and were crushed by the descending golden light. The soldiers who had not entered immediately tried to bombard it, only to find that the defense of this layer of golden light was extremely strong. The soldiers who had already entered found themselves trapped in the city, losing contact with the outside world. Nitian Hanxing frowned slightly. Formation destruction beasts, superior extermination cannons, fire at the same time. However, the power that could easily destroy 10 layers of formations fell on the golden light screen, but it only caused a ripple. Nitian Hanxing suddenly stood up, and his expression finally changed. Attack the city, but at this moment, endless screams sounded in the city. Through the golden light screen, it could be seen that under the golden light, all the soldiers who were not from the wizard tribe were emitting smoke, as if they were about to burn. It was the divine power in their bodies that was ignited. The sky-reaching ancestral statue was the last trump card of the Wang clan. It was originally used to restrain the creatures in the Red Dust Forbidden Lands. If the Red Dust Forbidden Lands were to be broken one day, this statue would be the last weapon to destroy the creatures in the Red Dust Forbidden Lands. The God Realm's army was burning. Not to mention their combat power, they could not even protect themselves. All of them panicked and looked for an area where the golden light could not reach. On the other hand, the wizard tribe's army was not affected at all. They split up and chased after the god realm's army that was fleeing in the city. The wizard tribe in the city also chased after the soldiers who had fallen into their trap, like dogs that had fallen into the water. Another 3 days and 3 nights passed. When the power of the sky-reaching ancestral statue was exhausted and the golden light screen disappeared, only less than 100,000 soldiers from the god realm managed to escape alive. The rest were all buried in the city. A total of 5 million soldiers, more than half of the elites of the god realm's army, were all lost. Such heavy casualties were definitely not part of Nitian Hanshing's third plan. Nitian Hanshing's eyes were filled with boundless coldness. All the personnel in charge of Qing Capital's intelligence, execute them all, leave no one alive. Soon, the smell of blood wafted from the army, as well as a few sporadic sounds of resistance. The army was dead silent. The unprecedented heavy blow made them, who had been invincible all this time, feel extremely frustrated. Since entering the Lost Nation, their casualties had been less than 100,000. However, they had suffered 5 million casualties in Qing Capital. The strong contrast had dealt a heavy blow to their invincible fighting spirit. Nitian Hanshing looked down at his soldiers coldly and said, "A weak army is bound to be defeated. They are no longer of any use." He raised his eyes and looked at the silhouette of the silver-haired youth who had been standing on the city wall until now. His murderous intent was deep. "You killed half of my soldiers. You are indeed the one who blocked my path of defying my will. Pass down the order, activate the final plan." Nitian Hanshing took a deep breath, and the depths of his eyes were filled with violence. "I did not want to take this step. Su Yu, you will be buried with all the creatures in Qing Capital." In the city, the ground was covered with corpses and blood. Although the soldiers of the god realm had been annihilated, the casualties of the wizard tribe could not be ignored. At a glance, it was full of wounded soldiers. Wang Qingchen was covered in blood, and the wizard tribe knife in his hand had been rolled up. It had been scrap. His body was also covered with many wounds, and he looked quite miserable. But his expression was full of excitement, and he licked his lips. "At the cost of 30,000, we have annihilated 5 million enemy troops. It is really an unimaginable achievement. It was all thanks to Brother Su's command that we were able to complete this trick." It turned out that this was also one of Su Yu's plans. All the previous stubborn resistance, and the collapse of the city, were all intentional. He had used this opportunity to lure the army of the god realm into the city, and with the help of the Wang clan's great killing weapon, the sky-reaching ancestral statue, they were annihilated. If not for this, with Nitian Hanshing's cunning, he would never have been fooled. Su Yu shook his head. "I did not kill a single enemy, so I did not get any credit. The ones who should be thanked are the wizards who sacrificed themselves." Wang Qingchen said, "Brother Su, rest assured that the Wang family will compensate the families of the soldiers who were injured and killed, and will never let their sacrifice be in vain. They contributed to the victory of this war." However, after a long silence, Su Yu took a light breath. "It is true that they sacrificed themselves, but victory, it is too early. Nitian Hanshing's final move has not been shown yet." As soon as his voice fell, Su Yu was surrounded by silence. The commanders around him, as well as Wang Qingchen, were all rooted to the ground like wooden stakes. Looking at the damaged city walls that were about to collapse, Wang Qingchen swallowed with difficulty. Such a huge offensive, and it is still not considered a great killing weapon? Su Yu shook his head slightly. "It is not." Everyone held their breath. If that did not count, how fierce and terrifying would Nitian Hanshing's final move be? Su Yu waved his wrist and summoned the sacred Kylin in front of everyone. "How are the preparations going these days?" Su Yu asked. The sacred Kylin laughed and said, "It has been prepared for a long time. The creatures of Jojo are very grateful to you. Although this task is a bit hard, as long as it is something you need to do, everyone will rush to help. Rest assured, everything has been done according to your plan. Su Yu's inclination to Jojo's resources had allowed Jojo to take off and enter an unprecedented era of prosperity. Deities were born one after another, and there were as many as hundreds of prospective deities. Their respect for Su Yu was unparalleled. Su Yu nodded slightly. Well, thank them for me. The sacred Kylan said, Okay, look for us at any time if you need anything. As he spoke, he returned to the Jojo Cavern world in front of everyone. Wang Qingchen's eyes flashed with surprise. Brother Su, what have you prepared? Chapter 1452. Wang Qingchen could no longer suppress the curiosity in his heart. He said, Brother Su, the war has reached its final stage. Can we solve the mystery now? What kind of unimaginable means will Nitian Hanxing use? Now that things had come to this, it did not matter if the news was leaked. If I were him, the quickest, simplest, and most unexpected method would be, Su Yu said slowly. His voice was still echoing when the city wall beneath his feet suddenly trembled and collapsed rapidly. The generals on the city wall flew away in shock, their eyes filled with shock. They could vaguely feel that an unimaginable explosive energy was about to erupt beneath Xing capital. The snakes, insects, rats, and ants in the city were frightened away, fleeing out of the city. Although they were weak, their premonitions of unknown forces were stronger than the people of the wizard tribe. The ferocious beasts that had been reared in the city howled in unison, breaking free from their shackles and escaping from Xing capital. Some of the wizard tribe members who had practiced premonition sorcery, combined with the unusual behavior of the living creatures, could vaguely sense that an unimaginable disaster was coming. They ran around the city in panic, warning the people of the wizard tribe to leave Xing capital as soon as possible. Far away from Xingjing, it was clearly dusk, but rainbows rose from the horizon in all directions. Sometimes they were bright, and sometimes they were dim, illuminating Xingjing city into a world of 7 colors. From afar, it was magnificent but also eerie. Wang Qingchen's pupils shrank. What happened? What caused the atmosphere to change drastically, and strange rainbows to appear continuously? Zheng Laodao stared at the ground. As carefree as he was, his old face was covered with beads of sweat. What is that under the city wall? The explosive energy that could destroy heaven and earth and collapse the world sent chills down the spines of those who sensed it. If not for Su Yu's supreme majesty, those who were not strong-willed would have left the battlefield and fled for their lives. Su Yu's gaze was profound, as if he could see through everything hidden beneath the earth. He said, It's an abandoned tunnel. Wang Qingchen and the 8 commanders said, Didn't you blow up the abandoned tunnel leading to the city and completely block it? Shaking his head, Su Yu pointed into the distance. What I am talking about are the countless tunnels that surround Xing capital. In the past, the tunnels dug by the wizard tribe near Xing capital were intricate and complicated. With Xing capital as the center, they covered a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. Under the ground that you can't see with your naked eyes, there are tunnels like spider webs. Su Yu stood high in the sky, his eyes pale. He saw what they couldn't see. Wang Qingchen said, We know this, but so what? What do you think? Su Yu asked. If all the tunnels are destroyed at the same time, what do you think will happen? All the passages. Wang Qingchen was stunned. For a moment, he could not understand the chill of all. When the scene of the entire cobweb-like tunnel being destroyed appeared in his mind, he suddenly shivered and took a deep breath. He's going to create a super space crack. Looking down from above, Xingjing City was like a small prey embedded in a giant spider web. It was as if a spider's web had collapsed at the same time, and millions of lands had been destroyed at the same time. The destructive power produced was enough to create a super space crack that covered a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. In front of such a crack, Xing capital was nothing more than a speck of dust. It could not withstand the slightest bit and would be devoured. Xing Laodao trembled all over, his voice trembling. How did they do it? Is it possible to destroy so many tunnels at the same time? Su Yu nodded. Impossible. Even if Nitian Hanxing took action, it would be impossible. Without waiting for them to breathe a sigh of relief, Su Yu said, "But, if it's a super-civilization weapon that has never appeared in the world, anything is possible." Sensing the increasingly ferocious destructive energy underground, they believed Su Yu's words without any conditions. Nitian Hanxing had used an unknown civilization weapon. At that moment, the seven-colored rainbow in the sky was suddenly extinguished. What replaced it was a vast expanse of darkness that had no luster. It was a blackness that devoured everything. It was like a black hole, swallowing everything around it and crushing it into dust. The pitch-black area was initially only the size of a rainbow, shaped like a black half-moon hanging in the sky. However, it rapidly expanded and gradually revealed its true ferocious appearance, a crack that looked like a giant mouth that could swallow the sky. In 8 directions, rapidly expanding space cracks appeared at the same time, intersecting with each other in the sky, quickly tearing the sky into pitch-black fragments. With Xing capital as the center, the world in all 4 directions had been reduced to space crack. Moreover, the cracks rapidly expanded towards Xing capital from 8 directions. From afar, it looked like 8 long pitch-black knives that spanned hundreds of millions of mountains and rivers were slashing towards Xing capital. Looking around, they had been surrounded by the space cracks. There was no way out, only death awaited them. The creatures in the city had despair in their eyes. Wang Qingchen and the 8 commanders looked at the unprecedented scene of destruction, and they were extremely shocked. Nitian Hanxing, who had retreated hundreds of millions of miles away, stood outside the space cracks with his 5 million troops, watching the scene from afar. Behind them, an extremely huge, simple-looking, and exaggerated flying artifact slowly flew away, flying towards Xing capital. A trace of residual destructive energy followed the path of its departure, spreading along the way. Nitian Hanxing looked into the distance at Xing capital, which was no longer in sight. His whole body was bursting with overbearing defiance. "This is what happens to those who refuse to obey me. All living beings will perish. Su Yu, goodbye." Nitian Hanxing shook his head and said, "It's a pity that you can't shake my way of defiance. You are destined to be a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. Let's go." Nitian Hanxing flung his cloak, setting off a boundless wind and clouds. He led the 5 million troops to the final destination, Xing capital. As for Xing capital, it had been obliterated in the dust. However, just as they were about to move, suddenly, a boundless blood-red light gushed out from the depths of the ground behind them. From the depths of the ground, it rose into the sky, shrouding Nitian Hanxing and the 5 million troop. They were caught off guard and had no defense at all. Nitian Hanxing's eyes narrowed. This red light, is it the power of space? A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and Nitian Hanxing made a prompt decision. Evacuate this area, don't stay. However, no matter how far they leaped forward, the red light shot out from the ground. Nitian Hanxing finally noticed that something was wrong. He stomped hard on the ground, and a crack suddenly appeared. From the depths of the ground, a rune was squeezed out. Within the rune, there was a drop of diluted divine blood. Father's divine blood? Nitian Hanxing was slightly shocked. This was extracted from the superior extermination cannon. Then, he stomped again and squeezed out another rune. The divine blood of the World Annihilation Emperor? Nitian Hanxing was shocked again. This divine blood was most recently found in the capital of the Empire of Darkness, and the person who has it is Su Yu. Nitian Hanxing's pupils shrank, and a strong sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. He was like a prey that had fallen into a trap. That sense of danger was stronger than ever before. Retreat. We have fallen into a trap. Nitian Hanxing's heart was thumping wildly, and his intuition told him that an unprecedented crisis was approaching. He had been busy with the renovation for the past 3 days, and had no time to eat, so he had no energy to write. Chapter 1453. However, it was too late to retreat now. At the top of the sky, a huge blood-red eye emerged quietly. This was the divine path's eye of space. Compared to the wine red of the past, it was now blood-red, looking exceptionally eerie. Deep underground, the runes wrapped in the blood of the Emperor burst open, detonating the divine blood within. The eye of space appeared even redder. This was the blood of the Emperor, which could enhance the power of the divine path. 1 drop was precious, let alone tens of thousands of drops. This was what Su Yu had asked the creatures of Jiuzhou to do, to secretly arrange the divine blood outside Qing capital. Wherever the divine blood appeared, the power of space in the area illuminated by the eye of space would increase. Moreover, it was an unprecedented increase. This move consumed 90% of the divine blood that Su Yu had stored, but the effect was astonishing. The mutated eye of space erupted with the ultimate power of space, covering a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. With more and more divine blood erupting, the power of space accumulated in the eye of space reached its limit. The atmosphere fluctuated, and the world became blurred, as if the boundaries had been blurred by the power of space. Shrouded in the blood-red light, Nitian Hanxing and the 5 million troops all felt their heads become heavy and their feet become light. They were caught in a boundless space change. Nitian Hanxing's face was pale, and a huge sense of crisis was beating wildly in his heart. Finally, as the huge blood-red eye slowly closed, a super-spatial fluctuation that covered hundreds of millions of miles was born. Nitian Hanxing, the 5 million troops, and the endless mountains and rivers were all transported by the power of space in an instant, disappearing from where they stood. Qing capital, which was surrounded by the crack of space, and was about to be destroyed, was also transported away by the power of space at the critical moment. Rumble. As Qing capital suddenly landed, the city walls trembled as if a huge earthquake had occurred, shattering 90% of the buildings. The glorious Qing capital was almost instantly razed to the ground. Although there were not too many casualties, it had been reduced to ruins. When the spiritual energy of the world subsided and the dust settled, the wizards who had survived the disaster walked out of the ruins, looking at the clear sky with excitement. What happened? Yes, where is the crack of space? We didn't die. No, what was that blood-red light? They could not understand how they could survive that boundless crack of death. Only Wang Qingchen and the 8 commanders on the city wall saw it up close. It was Su Yu who had performed a magical power. It was a spatial divine ability that spanned billions of miles. They were not the only ones who were shocked. Even the emperors of the 4 great dynasties of the ancient god realm found it hard to believe that a space divine ability of such a large area could be used. Su Yu slowly closed his reddened right eye, and the giant eye in the sky also gradually dissipated. Wang Qingchen looked around in shock. Where are we? His voice came to an abrupt halt. Hundreds of millions of miles behind them was the horrifying space crack created by Nitian Hanxing. At the critical moment, Su Yu paid a huge price to teleport the whole city out. Then, where are Nitian Hanxing and the others? Wang Qingchen asked. If he remembered correctly, this was where Nitian Hanxing and his army were. Su Yu turned around and looked at the crack in space. Wang Qingchen was slightly stunned. When he realized what was going on, his expression changed drastically, and his lips trembled. They were teleported inside? After receiving Su Yu's gentle nod, Wang Qingchen's lips twitched and his whole body trembled. That was excitement, agitation. The 8 commanders were also very excited, and said, Nitian Hanxing and his 5 million troops were teleported along with us, and perished in the crack of space that he created? More or less, Su Yu said expressionlessly. Everyone cheered and celebrated the final victory. What was even more ridiculous was that the enemy did not die in their hands, but in the crack that they had created to destroy everything. Ha ha! It's true that the evils of heaven can be avoided, but the evils of one's own actions cannot be avoided. He wanted to slaughter all the creatures in Qing capital, leaving nothing behind, but in the end, he buried himself. Ha ha! If he had not been so vicious and left us a glimmer of hope, we would not have fallen into such a desperate situation now. The great battle lasted for 6 days and 6 nights. Both sides fought with everything they had, and it could be said that they were exhausted. What was particularly gratifying was that, in a situation where they were obviously at a disadvantage, they turned defeat into victory step by step, and even thwarted the enemy's final plot, burying the enemy within. It was a miracle. Many of the wizard tribesmen looked at Suyu. His body was not majestic, but in their hearts, at this moment, it was comparable to the Moonwatch sect leader. Among the crowd, only one person understood Suyu. Wang Qingshan said, "Brother Su, what do you mean by more or less? Could they still survive in that kind of space crack?" Suyu said, "Most of the 5 million troops could not survive, but Nitian Hanxing. The deeper he is in a desperate situation, the stronger his path of defiance becomes. Others will certainly die, but he may not." Almost as soon as Su Yu's voice fell, in the boundless dark crack, a white light flashed. It was an arrow full of indomitable defiance, full of indomitable will to kill those who were disobedient. The long arrow pierced through the dark crack, creating a passage. A young man with a torn cloak and broken armor flew out from it, his hair disheveled. He had a dark face, an unprepossessing appearance, and a domineering defiance that wanted to trample all living beings under his feet. Who else could it be but Nitian Hanxing? Immediately after, more than 50 powerful commanders flew out from behind him. They were all decisive deities with a cultivation of level 3 heaven. They were the elites of Nitian Hanxing's army, the soul of the army. With them, Nitian Hanxing could immediately restore his strength and rebuild the iron-blooded army after recruiting 5 million troops. As long as they were not dead, this battle could not be considered a complete victory. However, the two were separated by countless mountains and rivers, and they might not be able to catch up even if they wanted to escape. Even if they could catch up, how many of them could the wizard tribe, which had suffered heavy casualties, stop them? Nitian Hanxing breathed heavily, his face pale, and his whole body was surrounded by a strong defiance that was almost tangible. The strength of the defiance was beyond the past, unprecedentedly powerful. Despite his exhaustion, his face was overflowing with surprise, and he could not help but look up and laugh. Suyu, Suyu. You wanted to put me to death and put me in a desperate situation, but you let my defiance break through the shackles for a long time. As long as I rest in peace for half a month, I can step into the realm of level 2 deities. At that time, Suyu, wait for me to take your life. Although he had lost 5 million troops, he had unexpectedly gained a surge in the defiance, which was a blessing for him. The generals could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Only they had escaped from the crack, but the soldiers they had brought out over the years had stayed inside forever. At this moment, what Nitian Hanxing cared about was not them, but the advancement of his own cultivation. Was it really worth it for them to risk their lives for the heaven-defying empire? Many generals had questions in their minds. Let's go. Rebuild the army and come back to Qing capital. Next time, I will kill them all with my own hands. Nitian Hanxing looked up and laughed as he led the crowd away. However, at this moment, the yin and yang of heaven and earth suddenly became chaotic, and a young man with a pair of black and white wings on his back appeared in front of everyone with his arms crossed. Suyu. Many of the generals were startled. They had never expected that Suyu would come before so many of them alone. Even Nitian Hanxing was stunned, but he immediately sneered. Don't talk nonsense with him, kill him immediately. After seeing Su Yu's plan, Nitian Hansheng finally believed that he was a formidable enemy with endless means. He did not want to give Su Yu any chance. Su Yu looked indifferent and said calmly, "Generals, are you still willing to listen to such a commander?" Nitian Hansheng's eyes darkened, and he shouted, "Generals, listen to my orders, do not listen to this person's words. He will be killed, and those who disobey will be severely punished." The majesty of the past was still there. As soon as Nitian Hansheng gave the order, they, as soldiers, instinctively attacked Su Yu. There were 50 people, and if they attacked together, even the emperors of the 4 great empires might not be able to withstand it. "You are all defeated generals, and you all know what will happen to you. Even so, are you still willing to listen to his orders?" Su Yu was calm and composed, and his words penetrated the deepest worries in their hearts. Yes, they were defeated in this battle. Tens of millions of soldiers were buried in foreign lands, setting an unprecedented casualty record for the heaven-defying empire. Such a major failure would surely be blamed by the monarch. With such a responsibility, how could the people's anger be quelled without the death of the previous generals? How could the morale of the army be stabilized? Coupled with Nitian Hansheng's ruthlessness and lack of mercy, this matter would undoubtedly happen. Any trusted aide around him could suffer the fate of death. Nitian Hansheng's expression softened, and he no longer had his previous arrogance. He said, "Generals, rest assured that I will protect you in front of my father and will not make things difficult for you." Strangely, his promise did not convince the generals, but made them even more cautious. They stopped one after another and looked at each other. Nitian Hansheng's heart skipped a beat, and he sincerely said, "Generals, do you not even believe in my promise?" They were still standing in the same place, exchanging glances with each other, as if they were discussing. At this time, Su Yu said leisurely, "Do you think a rebel who will perish if he refuses to obey you will yield to you?" The generals, who were already suspicious, became even more hesitant. They knew Nitian Hansheng's character better than anyone else. Not to mention the fact that they were guilty of a major defeat, their hesitant behavior now would surely lead to a reckoning with them later. "Don't worry, I will not make things difficult for you," Nitian Hansheng said hurriedly. But the more he did so, the more uneasy the generals became. Rebels never gave in, never backed down, and Nitian Hansheng would not. There was no doubt that in Nitian Hansheng's heart, he had already sentenced them to death. At this time, Su Yu said in a seductive tone, "Generals, Nitian Hansheng treats everyone leniently, but he treats everyone strictly. The biggest mistake you have made is a fatal disaster, but he has sacrificed millions of troops, and he doesn't care. Dare I ask, is such a commander still worth following? Even if he does not pursue the matter of this defeat, what about in the future? Who can guarantee that they can live peacefully under his hands forever? You will definitely die when you return this time. Why not take this opportunity to leave Nitian Hansheng and choose another master?" Chapter 1454. I'm just stating the facts, and I didn't add any embellishments. "I'm sure all of you know what's true and what's false," Su Yu said. "Generals, if you don't mind, you can join me." As he spoke, Su Yu waved his sleeves, and a prepared video floated in the sky. In the video, the former traitor of the God Realm, Guocheng, General Bai, and a group of soldiers, accompanied by Wang Qinchen, were enjoying all kinds of good wine, food, and beautiful women in the city. They were accompanied by the heir of the Wang family, Wang Qinchen. The wizard tribesmen in the city gave them face, and did not discriminate. Not only did the two of them get beautiful women, but they also got a mansion and were even put in important positions. In the battle at the western city gate, it was the two of them who made great contributions. Su Yu wasn't wary of them in the slightest. This was the difficult task that Su Yu had given them, to enjoy to their heart's content. Let them be a living example to attract the enemy to surrender. As a human, as a former member of the God Realm, I don't want to say that all creatures in the world are originally a family. The wizard tribe is the wizard tribe, and the God Realm is the God Realm. There is a natural difference between races. It is reasonable that you don't trust the wizard tribe, but can you trust me? Suyu said. I don't think I am a good person, but I have never killed innocent people, and I have never treated any of my subordinates harshly. Under my command, at least you don't have to worry about me being moody, at least you don't have to worry about losing your life if you make the slightest mistake, at least you don't have to worry about whether you will still be alive tomorrow. I don't give you much, but these are things that Nitian Hanshin can't give you. These words deeply touched their hearts. They had the intention to leave Nitian Hanshin and avoid this disaster. The problem was, where should they go after escaping? Would the other 3 empires dare to take them in? Nitian Hanshin even dared to steal the princess of the Empire of Darkness and the Taiching Empire. How difficult would it be to send someone to kill them? The world was so big, and the only place that could accommodate them was one place. The Lost Nation. And in the Lost Nation, the only one that they could trust was their former enemy, Suyu. If there was anyone who had such courage and strength to protect them, it could only be Suyu. After a long internal struggle, someone finally took a step forward. Suyu had a slight impression of this person. He was also one of the defending generals who had besieged the Blackwood Forest's outpost. He had captured the saint, Zhao Tianyin, and made a great contribution. At this moment, he made a decision first. He took a step forward, and his figure disappeared as he appeared beside Suyu. He cupped his fists at Nitian Hanshin. I'm sorry. Nitian Hanshin's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Nan Hui, you damn traitor. Nan Hui said faintly, It's better to be a traitor than to be punished without reward. To think that I captured Holy Son Zhao Tianyin alive, yet I didn't receive any rewards. If I make a mistake, I'm sure I'll immediately incur a fatal disaster, right? Zhao Tianyin said indifferently. Being mean and ungrateful was the most disappointing thing about Nitian Hanshin. Shua, another level 3 general, suddenly walked out and came to Suyu's side. He saluted Nitian Hanshin with cupped fists. It's you. Nitian Hanshin recognized that this was the general responsible for transporting the bride, Li Xian. Li Xian. Nan Hui's betrayal is one thing, but I've never been harsh on you. Nitian Hanshin said angrily. Li Xian was a female general, and she said lightly, Maybe you've forgotten the soldiers who escorted Xue Xiaoman that were executed by you? Do you know that my parents were among them? Nitian Hanshin was stunned. The soldiers who escorted Xue Xiaoman either did not return or got lost in the Blackwood Forest. Those who returned were executed by Nitian Hanshin. It didn't matter if they were his trusted aides or not. Shwar, 2 more generals chose to leave and stood on the opposite side. Ha ha! Why are you doing this? Could it be that I killed your parents too, or that I won't be rewarded? Nitian Hanshin laughed angrily. The 2 of them looked at each other and said, We won't go so far as to kill our parents, but old Huang is our best friend. He didn't die in the hands of handsome Su, but in your hands. We just don't want to follow in his footsteps. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the strongest fortress was always breached from the inside. The betrayal of the 4 was like a breach in a dam that was filled with water. More and more generals, after careful consideration, made a wise choice. Following Nitian Hanshin would only lead to death. If they didn't die in the hands of the enemy, they would die in his hands. Why not choose another master? In particular, Nitian Hanshin was no longer as majestic as he used to be. Now, he was like a stray dog. If they didn't leave now, when would they? 50 level 3 deities accounted for 30% of the strong men of the heaven-defying empire. 40 of them chose to side with Suyu and stood with him, coldly confronting Nitian Hanshin. Suyu looked around at the generals who stood firmly behind Nitian Hanshin and said indifferently, Are you sure you want to follow such a commander? You only have one chance. There was no doubt that he would not let Nitian Hanshin escape, let alone those who were related to him. Nitian Hanshin shouted coldly, That's enough. Those traitors, you can take them in if you want. If they can betray me today, they can betray you tomorrow. Keep such weak-minded people for yourself. I don't care about them. Only the loyal generals who follow me firmly deserve to be cultivated by me. Poof! However, at that moment, a black dagger with a dark luster suddenly pierced through Nitian Hanshing's chest. The owner of the black dagger was Nitian Hanshing's confidant, his most trusted confidant, and a supporter who had always stood by his side. The cold edge of the blade and the excruciating poison stimulated Nitian Hanshing. He turned his head and stared at his confidant, with black blood at the corner of his mouth. He said in a low voice, "Why? Pang Du, you are my brother who grew up with me, and I personally guided you in your training. I thought you were the only one who would not betray me." The many deities who had already sided with Su Yu were also surprised. If anyone among them was Nitian Hanshing's confidant, then Pang Du was the most confidant of all. When he was young, he was selected from countless children with amazing potential by the Empire to accompany the prince as he grew up. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were brothers. His betrayal was the most surprising. Pang Du's face was fair and looked very gentle, but at the moment, there was a hint of savagery and pleasure on his face. He said in a hoarse voice, "Brother? When you took my woman and forced me to give up, did you ever treat me as a brother? In your eyes there was only yourself, and no one else. Even the person he trusted the most chose to betray him." At this moment, Nitian Hanshing was deserted by his own people. "So, Nitian Hanshing, you deserve to die." Pang Du let out a venomous laugh. With a flip of his palm, the dagger twisted the heart. However, Nitian Hanshing did not die. His face was gloomy, and his murderous intent erupted. "No matter what, those who betray me must die." From his chest, a dark red energy burst out and instantly melted the dagger. At the same time, it gushed out along the wound and sprayed all over Pang Du's upper body. A shocking scene appeared. Pang Du's upper body was instantly evaporated into nothingness by the dark red energy, and he died on the spot. His death quickly changed the minds of those supporters who had been determined to follow Nitian Hanshing. This person could not be followed. In the end, the remaining 9 people also chose to side with Su Yu. Nitian Hanshing had really become a loner. He alone had to face the 50 generals of the past, as well as a lifelong enemy. His palm touched his chest, and the wound healed automatically. A dark red heart that was different from that of ordinary people could be vaguely seen. It was filled with the blood of the heaven-defying divine warrior. With this heart, it could ensure that he was immortal, and it could also kill people, such as Pang Du, who was careless. Nitian Hanshing looked coldly at the people on the other side of the river, and with a fierce look, he memorized their faces one by one. "Those who betray me will be killed without mercy. Whether you go to the ends of the earth or escape to the heavens or the earth, I swear that I will use all my strength to kill you one by one in this lifetime. Including your 9 clans, I will kill you one by one, leaving no one alive." As his voice fell, it turned into a strange and obscure wave that surged into the heavens and the earth. This was the vow of the defying will. Once the vow was made, it would be integrated into the defying divine path. As long as it was not achieved, the defying will would not be smooth. For Nitian Hanshing, this was definitely the most resolute vow. He was only one person, but his words caused the faces of the 50 people to change. They knew the meaning of his words, and they knew that Nitian Hanshing would definitely do this. "What are you waiting for?" Su Yu said lightly. "Waiting for your 9 clans to be destroyed, or waiting for him to escape this disaster and come back to seek revenge on you one by one?" When everyone heard this, their hearts trembled. Yes, there was no turning back now that they had come this far. As long as Nitian Hanshing did not die, they would never be at peace. "Kill! Kill the tyrant!" Everyone rose up and charged towards Nitian Hanshing. Nitian Hanshing looked up and laughed. "You can't keep me here. Remember what I said, I will come back." Swish! He took out a fan, and the moment he opened it, an even more terrible defying will gushed out from the fan. That was Nitian Gyun's defying will. The defying will turned into a boundless giant palm, slapping towards the crowd with great destructive power. Everyone was shocked and could not dodge in time, especially the person who rushed at the front, who was about to be killed by the palm. However, at that instant, a cold harumph could be heard from behind them. Following this, an overwhelming battle intent was born. A divine weapon shaped like any weapon in the world, bursting with a sharp edge, pointed directly at the giant palm formed by the defying will. The two sides collided violently. Although the giant palm of the defying will was powerful, the divine weapon was indomitable and stronger. After several confrontations, Su Yu's fighting spirit exceeded the limit and destroyed the giant palm that contained Nitian Gyun's attack. As the giant palm was destroyed, there was only a muffled groan. Nitian Hanxing was covered in blood and turned into starlight that dissipated. He did not die, but escaped with injuries. The starlight contained the breath of the heaven-defying divine blood. He must have used the treasure of the royal family to escape. Su Yu transformed from the state of the divine weapon into a human figure. Carefully perceiving, he could no longer sense his existence. This was considered a head-on fight between them, and the result was Nitian Hanxing escaping with injuries. Su Yu frowned deeply. This time, Nitian Hanxing did not die. In half a month, he would definitely break through the shackles and reach level 2. When that time came, the threat would increase several times. Chapter 1455. Behind him, the generals kept quiet out of fear. Su Yu had just defeated Nitian Gyun's attack. What did this mean? He had the power to fight a level 2 deity. Some who were hesitant made up their minds. In this world, there might be a few people who could fight against Nitian Hanxing, but Su Yu was the only one who was willing to protect them. "Greetings, Commander Su, we are willing to serve you." The group exchanged glances and knelt on one knee in unison. Su Yu waved his hand, and a gentle force lifted them up. He said, "Since you are following me, there is no need for the previous formalities. I am not Nitian Hanxing, and I do not need you to be respectful to me." Although they did not say anything, there was an inexplicable sense of relief in their hearts. "Now I have 2 orders for you. First, you immediately return to the heaven-defying empire. If you have relatives and friends, you can move them to Xing capital." Everyone was filled with emotion. After being summoned, the first task they received was not to kill the enemy, but to rescue their relatives and friends. Compared to Nitian Hanxing, they could not help but feel relieved. Perhaps they should have left Nitian Hanxing long ago. Second, after you return to the Empire, if you can convince your classmates and friends to work for me in secret, it will be better. If you make a contribution, you will be rewarded, but do not expose yourself. As he spoke, Su Yu took out a pile of extremely rare and precious resources from Chu Long's space ring, which had an unexpected effect on level 3 deities. When everyone saw it, their faces changed. They had worked hard in the God realm for 10 years, but they might not be able to get so many resources. Under my command, rewards and punishments are clear. You can go and do it immediately. The crowd was grateful and rushed back to the Empire to rescue their relatives and friends. The remaining 7 or 8 had no attachments in the Empire, so they followed Su Yu back to the ruined Xing capital. On the city wall, the people of the wizard tribe had already welcomed Su Yu's return. In this battle, Su Yu had played a role in turning the tide. If anyone else in the city had been the commander, it would have been impossible to achieve the final victory, not even the Wang clan master himself. Su Yu pressed his hand down, motioning for them to be quiet, and said, "Now, it is time to invite the 3 seniors, and the traitor hiding among us." Hearing the word traitor, all the sorcerers in the city hated him. It was the help of a traitor that allowed them to secretly release Admiral Whitebone and the others, nearly causing a huge disaster. Fortunately, Su Yu had predicted the enemy's movements and made arrangements in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The 8 commanders were also brimming with murderous intent, and under Su Yu's lead, they headed straight for the Great Hall. There was a special divine statue shielding the outside of the main hall, causing the people inside to be unable to sense the outside world, let alone know what was going on outside. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple said solemnly, "It's been 6 days and 6 nights. Could it be that Su Yu is at a disadvantage? I think it's necessary to change the commander. If not, we can go out and take a look ourselves." In fact, the people in the hall could not keep their cool either. Whether it was the Wang clan leader, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, or the Saint and Kalen, it would be a lie to say that they were not worried about the outcome of this battle. They also wanted to take a look at the situation in the outside world, but they still restrained themselves. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple said, "No." Precisely because there was no movement for 6 days and 6 nights, it meant that the situation was good. Either the enemy has not arrived yet, or they are still resisting. It is at least several times better than Fan Capital being conquered in a short period of time. These words had some calming effect. Indeed, no news was good news. As for changing the commander at the last minute, this is a military taboo. How could the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple not know about it? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple said meaningfully, "As for going out and taking a look, have you forgotten why we are gathered here? It is to prevent the news from leaking out." When everyone heard this, they were all suspicious of the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple. If someone said at this moment that he was a spy, perhaps half of them would believe it. The other half did not believe it because of his identity. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was second only to the Moonwatch sect master. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple did not change his expression and reprimanded, "I am just concerned about the situation of the wizard tribe, and I am confused. Are you questioning me?" To be honest, there were many doubters. Even the Wang clan master, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, and even Ling Wu were highly suspicious. How could a person in a high position say all kinds of unreasonable things at a time of difficulty without any problems? However, there was no evidence. The other party was the dignified Lord of the Holy Saint Temple. Even if they suspected him, they could not do anything to him, unless they found concrete evidence. At this moment, the isolation barrier outside the door was broken by a violent force. The faces of the people in the temple changed slightly. There was only one group of people who dared to use brute force to damage the barrier. The enemy. Boom. With a roar, the isolation barrier was destroyed. A group of people broke in. The leader was none other than Admiral Whitebone, who was supposed to be trapped in the cage. Behind Admiral Whitebone, there were more than a dozen level 3 deities, all dressed in the uniforms of the heaven-defying Empire's generals. With so many enemies suddenly rushing in, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that Xingjing City had fallen. As soon as Admiral Whitebone entered the temple, he immediately cupped his hands to the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple and said, "Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, the prince has succeeded in his mission. Thank you for your help, and the prince will definitely reward you handsomely." The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's face changed, and he shouted in a deep voice, "God Realm rebels, what nonsense are you talking about? When did I help you? The city has fallen, and the people are dead. Don't you dare to hurt the wizard tribe again. Take this." With a loud shout, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple immediately rushed over, casting a powerful spell, and went straight for Admiral Whitebone. Such fearlessness of death and unyielding character was truly admirable. However, halfway through, he suddenly stopped and sped up to Admiral Whitebone's side. The anger on his face disappeared and was replaced with joy. "Thank you, Admiral Whitebone, for leading the troops personally. May I ask if the prince has mentioned the position of cult master?" Admiral Whitebone nodded. "Of course I have. If the Moonview sect leader is destroyed, I will make you the new Moonview sect leader." Hearing this, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was overjoyed. He could not help but laugh. Ha ha ha, it was not in vain that I helped you so many times in secret. Please tell the prince that if the Saint Capital also needs help, I am willing to be at your service. His fearless words shocked everyone in the temple. The Wang clan master's expression changed. Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, you really betrayed the wizard tribe and went to the god realm? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple sneered. What betrayal? I was just thinking for myself. Am I supposed to just wait for my death? You coward! The Wang clan master scolded. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple sneered. A group of ignorant people. You have been in the Black Forest all year round and have no idea of the horrors of the god realm. Their ancestors were the 9 emperors, and they left behind many terrible weapons of civilization. We have no chance of winning. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple scolded. Stop hiding your ambition. You are doing this for the position of sect leader. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple did not shy away. He said, Why can't I be the sect leader? Why can I only train those juniors to be sect leaders, but I cannot be the sect leader? This is not fair. These remarks undoubtedly angered the crowd. The sect leader had chosen the rules and inherited them from the wizard ancestor. As the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple, his words had undoubtedly subverted the wizard ancestor's rules and provoked a wave of anger. Angry curses and accusations filled the temple. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's expression did not change. He laughed and said, Curse all you want, a group of losers. Now that Shring Capital has been destroyed and the God Realm army has occupied it, all of you will die. Don't even think about living. The Wang clan master, the mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, and Ling Wu looked at each other and released powerful sorcery. Many of the juniors in the temple were also bursting with unyielding fighting spirit. Although they were going to die, they were not willing to surrender. Is there any use in resisting? If it is, Su Yu, who claimed to be able to protect the safety of Shing Capital, will still be defeated in the end? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple shook his head and sighed. Accept your fate. The power of the God Realm is beyond your imagination. However, their auras did not weaken. Instead, they grew stronger. You shameless bastard, we may not be able to kill others, but we are more than enough to destroy you. The Wang clan master knew that the situation was hopeless and that there was no room for negotiation. He was prepared to kill this traitor with his life. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was fearless and laughed. Kill me? Why don't you take a look at who is standing behind me? However, just as he finished speaking, the voice of Admiral Whitebone behind him suddenly changed. It was a voice that the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was very familiar with. Oh? I feel that you should be the one to see exactly who is standing behind you. The eerie voice made the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple stiffen. He turned his head and his heart skipped a beat. He cried out, It's you? Su Yu. You are not Admiral Whitebone? Su Yu's body rippled with a layer of divine light. The form of Admiral Whitebone faded away and was replaced by Su Yu. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's heart trembled. He hurriedly flew towards the other God Realm generals and said, He is Su Yu, the commander of the enemy. He is now pretending to be Admiral Whitebone. You must arrest him quickly. However, the dozen generals were indifferent and looked at him with pity in their eyes. Noticing their strange behavior, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple's face gradually fell. You are also pretending to be the God Realm generals. Nan Hui said mockingly, We are the real deal. However, we are no longer working for Nitian Hanxing, but for Handsome Su. Thud, thud, thud. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple staggered a few times and fell to the ground. He stared at Su Yu in disbelief. How did you do it? How could they surrender to you? Su Yu said, It's very simple. Nitian Hanxing was defeated, and they have been loyal to me ever since. What? The God Realm army was defeated? The war was over? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple could not believe it. He stammered, How could you defeat them? In his memory, the God Realm army was an invincible existence. The wizard tribe was destined to be destroyed by the heaven-defying empire. Su Yu said, People like you will never understand what a miracle is. Lock him up. If he dares to move, kill him, Su Yu ordered indifferently. The God Realm generals behind him immediately stepped forward and firmly restrained him. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple finally reacted. Wait. Let me know before I die. You were pretending to be Admiral Whitebone just now to test me? Su Yu nodded nonchalantly. Impossible. There are so many people in the temple. How can you be sure that I am the traitor? Is it because we are not on good terms? Chapter 1456. Based on speculation? The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple was unwilling to give up. Su Yu shook his head. No, I saw it with my own eyes. I was at the Blackwood Forest Station and saw with my own eyes that the saint, Zhao Tianyin, handed a scroll to the people of the God Realm. At first, I didn't know what the scroll was, but after experiencing the destruction of Fan Capital in a short time, I had a guess. Su Yu's eyes were deep. I have been thinking, why are the people of the God Realm so familiar with the abandoned tunnels? In Fan Capital, they can find tunnels that lead directly into the city. In Xing Capital, they can find all the tunnels, and such comprehensive information can only be found in 3 places. First, the main altar of the Moonwatch sect. Second, the Saint Lady Temple. Third, the Saint Temple. Combined with the scroll sent by Zhao Tianyin, I can almost conclude that the spy is you. But there is no evidence, so I have to lure the snake out of its hole. After learning the cause and effect, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple looked up to the sky and laughed. Su Yu, I have been scheming for 10 years, and now I have lost everything because of you. Kill me if you want, I will admit defeat. Huh? He admitted defeat so easily? This was a little beyond Su Yu's expectations. Seal his sorcery, Su Yu said. The generals behind him no longer had any doubts and immediately stepped forward. But at this moment, one of them immediately stood up and said, Don't touch him. He is using the universal shifting spell. The 2 generals were alert and immediately retreated. Su Yu's eyes flashed, and he immediately waved out a space power to isolate the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple. Just as he was isolated, an invisible wave hit the blood-red light curtain. Suddenly, his figure disappeared and instantly appeared near the light curtain where the ripples collided. That was a kind of spell that allowed one to move their body. Wherever the ripples passed, the figure would teleport to that place. If touched by a creature along the way, it would teleport into the body of that creature and disappear without a trace. There was no way to find it again. If someone had not been vigilant, the 2 generals would have been fooled and the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple would have drilled into their bodies. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple turned gloomily and stared at the person who spoke. Xing Lin, did you betray me? He never thought that the one who betrayed him was actually his disciple, Xing Lin. Xing Lin said sternly, Master, you can teach me to be sinister and despicable, and you can teach me to be unscrupulous, but I am a witch, and this cannot be erased. If it was in the past, he probably wouldn't have done this. However, in the Red Dust Dream, he was stimulated by Su Yu's unyielding fighting spirit, and his mentality changed a lot. At the very least, he no longer had to lower his head to his esteemed teacher and turn a blind eye to his actions. Instead, he dared to point out his mistakes. If I had known this would happen, I would have killed you. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple cursed. No matter how cunning he was still defeated by his own disciple. Su Yu's eyes turned cold. He had been careless. The Lord of the Holy Saint Temple had mastered many unknown sorcery techniques. Just now, without Xing Lin's reminder, he really escaped. If that's the case, I can't let you live. Su Yu said nonchalantly. With a press of his 5 fingers, an extremely sharp fighting will descended with a loud rumble, crushing the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple. Knowing that he was going to die, the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple simply stopped begging for mercy and showed a look of hatred. Su Yu, you will not have a good end. Don't think that winning a victory is enough. The real battlefield has never been Fan capital and Xing capital, but, before he could finish his words, he was crushed into dust. Su Yu slowly added, it is the Saint capital. Everyone had already recovered from the shock of Su Yu's victory. When they heard the secret revealed by the Lord of the Holy Saint Temple before he died, they could not help but be shocked. The Wang clan master was horrified. Su Yu, what does he mean by that? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple, the Saint Lady, and others had no time to celebrate the miraculous victory in front of them. They all felt extremely uneasy and stared at Su Yu without blinking. It was as if Su Yu was their backbone. Su Yu looked in the direction of the Saint capital and nodded slightly. It is literally what it means. The Saint capital is the real main battlefield. Because the war in the Shring capital, from beginning to end, that person has never appeared. The person he mentioned made everyone's hearts tremble at the same time. They knew who it was, the ruler of the heaven-defying empire, Nitian Gyun. He had arrived in the Lost Nation and fought in the Battle of Fan capital. However, in the Battle of Xing capital, such a huge war, he was nowhere to be seen. There was only one reason. He had gone to do something more important. The importance of this matter was far greater than the war in the Xing capital. And in the Lost Nation, what else was more important than this war besides the Saint capital? Everyone's hearts sank. If the Battle of Shring capital was not the most important battle, how tragic would the war in the Saint capital be? The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple said, let's return to the capital immediately. The 2 temple masters and all the strong men in the temple have been sent out. I am afraid the Saint capital will not have much combat power available. No, it may be too late to go back now, Su Yu said. The Saint Lady was displeased. Why do you think so? Su Yu sighed. Haven't you already said it? All the masters in the capital have been sent out. Haven't you thought about the purpose of this? Knowing that the great enemy of the God realm was invading the Lost Nation, the 2 most important temples were transferred out of the holy land of the wizard tribe, the Saint capital. Unless the Moonwatch sect did not care about the Saint capital, they would never have done so. There was only one reason for this. The sect master had used an excuse to transfer them away from danger. The sect master is in danger. The Wang clan master was shocked. Pass the order. The strong men of the Wang clan will follow me into battle. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple also said, everyone from the greatest Saint Lady Temple, follow me. The order was issued, and the outside world was shaken. The wizard tribe army, which was still recovering, immediately regrouped and prepared to assist the Saint capital. Su Yu was silent and motionless. Wang Qingchen cupped his fists and said, Brother Su, I am very grateful for the help of the wizard tribe, but this trip to the Saint capital is full of danger. Brother Su, please do not get involved again. He could sense that this was a more terrible danger than the Battle of Xing capital. Perhaps Su Yu was not confident. I suggest that you do not rush to your death. Do not waste the Moonwatch sect master's good intentions, Su Yu said lightly. The crowd paused for a moment and continued to prepare without expression. The Wang clan master said, I am very grateful to you for saving the wizard tribe, but the sect master is in trouble. As wizards, we cannot stand by and do nothing. The mistress of the greatest Saint Lady Temple also said, I understand your feelings, but please be considerate of us. I am sorry that we cannot listen to your advice. They would not blame Su Yu for not saving them, because Su Yu had done enough for them. However, they could not listen to Su Yu. After all, the war was over, and he was no longer the commander. At this moment, Ling Wu, who had not spoken a word, stood up silently and sighed deeply. I think you may have to listen to Su Yu's advice. At this moment, Ling Wu's words were thought-provoking. He silently took out a golden statue from his sleeve. It was the sect master's oracle. As soon as this object appeared, everyone in the hall knelt down and saluted. "We will listen to the oracle." It turned out that Ling Wu had been sent here to supervise the war. He had secretly left behind an oracle. This was something no one had expected. The statue was crushed, and an image appeared in the air. The image moved, and a middle-aged man in a white robe appeared. When Su Yu saw this person, he could not help but be surprised. How could it be him? The middle-aged man in the white robe had an elegant temperament. He had met him twice before, once in the restaurant and once in the dungeon. He had come to the town where the heaven-defying empire was stationed, destroyed the divine eagle witch-hunting alliance, and killed some of the generals. These were the people Su Yu wanted to kill at that time. They had colluded with Zhao Tianyin to find the souls of the people of the God realm and help Zhao Tianyin cultivate the forbidden wizard technique. Unexpectedly, they were all killed by the mysterious middle-aged man. Even more unexpectedly, the mysterious middle-aged man was the Moonwatch sect master himself. This was something Su Yu had not expected. In the image, the middle-aged man smiled calmly. "Su Yu, are you surprised? I once said that we would meet again." Su Yu remembered that he had looked at Yongye Chushua strangely and had mysteriously concluded that they would meet again. Now that he thought about it, he had seen through the hidden power of the wizard ancestor in Yongye Chushua's body. To unlock the power of the wizard ancestor, the only way was to come to the wizard tribe. That was why he had made such an assertion. "However, I am also surprised that you would touch the wizard tombstone and challenge me," the middle-aged man said with a smile, his expression calm and tranquil. This was an image recorded in advance. Su Yu could not answer and could only look at the man talking to himself. "I have been in isolation for hundreds of years. A few months ago, I sensed the signs of an impending disaster, so I quietly left and traveled around. As a result, I found an ancient civilization weapon hidden in the heaven-defying empire. Its power is unparalleled. This thing may be the source of the disaster of the wizard tribe. It was also during this trip that I found that someone was collecting the souls of the dead and cultivating dark witchcraft. That is why I met you, Su Yu, the successor of the ancient god Jiulong." Su Yu was shocked. The ancient god Jiulong was the real owner of the divine nine-dragon cauldron. He had heard this from the central prefecture's king once. This was the second time. Who was the ancient god Jiulong? Su Yu was eager to ask. He was familiar with the history of the Star River God Realm, the Lost God Realm, and the Wizard Tribe, but he had never found the words ancient god Jiulong. "I didn't expect that the successor of the ancient god Jiulong mentioned by the wizard ancestor really exists. I thought it was just a legend." The Moonwatch sect leader continued, "If you are really the successor of the ancient god Jiulong, then you are qualified to challenge me." Hearing this, Su Yu was tempted. His only purpose in coming to the wizard tribe was to defeat the Moonwatch sect leader, obtain the sky-splitting yin-yang style, and save Yongye Chushua. Half a month ago, Ling Wu had said that the sect leader was preparing for the challenge. Now, he did not know if it could continue. The Moonwatch sect leader suddenly sighed. "If you see this image, then I think maybe you have already won?" Huh? Even though Su Yu was quick-witted, he was still confused. The challenge had not yet begun. How could Su Yu have won? Ling Wu said from the side. The sect leader had long expected that the three capitals would be attacked, so he used this as a challenge. Whoever could defend a city would be victorious. And you have saved Xing capital,